Astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaron from Jeranism back with another live video for you. It is Thursday. That means it's time for another, I don't know what you want to call it, interview, presentation style. Today I've got a special guest. He is a longtime friend. First time, though, I think, appearing on the channel. We can call him Triple R. It's kind of like Triple H, the WWE wrestler, only this guy has far less of a physique. But besides that, we'll call him Triple R. That's because he originally had a channel that is no longer, well, the channel's still there, but he can't access it. So we'll get into all that. He is Research Royal Rife. Triple R, how are you, my friend?
Hi, how are you? Doing good. Yeah, I'm no longer able to research the access the channel because me and my friend had a set up a disposable cell phone for it, and then to do recovery on Gmail you need the cell number, and we just didn't think we were going to lose the credentials, and then a hard drive got formatted, so I lost the password.
And just like that, it's gone.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I had the FAQ, and then I shared it with you guys, and then I shared the video with you guys, and of course, thank you for posting it, and thank you to Globebusters as well for posting it, and some of the other people who had mirrored it, copied it, and also, I think even somebody went as far as to translate it. So nice. I'm happy it was so well received, and there was definitely some things that I hadn't gotten around to covering that I would like to cover, and I'm assuming we'll have the opportunity to do that on the show today.
Yeah, so I'm showing the video right here from Research Royal Rife. There's 2 videos on that channel, and the link is in the description if you want to check it out. But one of the unique things I thought that there was about this documentary, not to mention just some of the experiments that he did, some of the atmospheric experiments. The original name was called Flat Earth Refraction, Stick and Shadow, Mirage, Experiments, FAQ, Documentary. Awesome was the
awesome.
original. I'm not going to leave that part out. But yeah, that was the original name. I kind of packaged it and called it Flat Earth Documentary, Refraction Experiments, and FAQ by Research Royal Rife. But one of the cool things about that video was that it included a pretty massive FAQ document, and that's kind of what the goal of today is going to be. We're going to kind of go through some of that, talk about that. But if you want to watch the actual hour-long documentary, the links are in the description to either the Research Royal Rife channel or the Jeranism channel. And like he said, there's many people that have already kind of redone that, repackaged that, even translated it. So what I'm showing here now is the FAQ document. If you're interested in getting it, reading it, perusing it, the easiest way to do that is to go to bit.ly/FEFAQ. Very simple. It's also in the description. Again, it's bit.ly, then /FEFAQ. Very easy. And it's like a 30-page document, 30-plus pages, and includes, last time I counted, about 70. You heard that right, 70 FAQ questions. We're going to start mowing through them today and just talk about them. It's kind of a discussion between homies, if you will. Triple R is my homie. Yeah, we talk a lot. What's up? He's on Skype, and we've gone back and forth for, it's been, 4 years now, right?
A while, yeah.
Yeah. So we just talk often. I think he's a very cool guy. I wish he would start making more videos and get a channel going, but he likes to kind of lurk, and I do see him occasionally, comment on different Friday shows or whatever. So he is lurking out there, but he's going to be more active. I am pushing him to do so. So this is one way to get him more active, is to get him back here doing a live show. Let's talk about these FAQs. But first, a lot of people may not know. They may not understand. They don't get it. Why would you make a channel with the name Research Royal Rife?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So when we were, I was just trying to come up with the name for the channel, and then I decided that I would dedicate it to one of the most important, unheard of people maybe in the world today. So there was a guy, I want to say maybe 80 years ago or 70 years ago or whatever. His name was Royal Rife, or Royal Raymond Rife. and he was kind of like the Tesla of medicine. He was just an unparalleled genius. At the time, he had developed the world's most powerful cellular microscope. And the reason it was so powerful is it had not only the ability to see things that were extremely small, but he could see them in vivo instead of like in vitro. I think that's what it is, right? If you see them live. So he was able to not harm cells by magnifying on them, and we can do that today with our technology, but his magnification was even better. And he had special irradiation techniques and lighting techniques. For example, he would use I think it's called heterodyning, where he would filter frequencies of light, and he'd use like special crystals and stuff in his microscopes, and they're amazing. There's old laboratory videos of his stuff, which I highly recommend people watch. Anyway, to cut to the chase, he cured like almost all of the diseases. He had like 20 different major diseases that he cured, I think, from maybe like typhus to things like cancer. And he was his method of doing it was by using harmonic frequencies. So, like when you see an opera singer singing and then she hits that perfect pitch note and then the glass breaks, right?
Right.
So the idea is that you can use harmonic frequencies to shatter bacteria. Now, I don't think Royal Rife would have contended that bacteria there's really bad or anything like that. He had proposed that bacteria is what's called pleomorphic, which means that when it's in a different part of a different environment or just changed out of its environment, it can change its shape and form. And it's interesting because this kind of reminds me a little bit of stem cells and the way they behave. Like if you have an embryonic cell, it's pluripotent. It wants to identify and become something else. So he was way ahead of his time. And even the idea of pleomorphism wasn't really traditionally accepted. And, they were pushing, the theories of like virology and other stuff like that. And I think that, he'd identified all these diseases, and then he spent like something along the lines of like 15, 20 years or I don't know how long, analyzing different bacterias and stuff like that, and he would just look at them under the microscope and find the frequencies that were required to cause them to vibrate and then burst. And the thing about harmonic frequencies is they only affect what you're trying to target. So
Right.
If he was to kill cancer cells, he would only kill cancer cells, unlike radiation, which kills, just everything. And the thing is that the FDA, well, actually, so he had problems with the AMA, who that had ended up just destroying his life. They ended up having a court case against him where he was called far like down away from his home, I think down south, and then he was like, I know he was in California, but I can't remember which colleges, but he might have been in NorCal and he was called to SoCal or something like that. But he also studied in Germany in Heidelberg, and so like. Yeah, they called him down south for the trial, and then they ended up like burning his lab down.
Right.
So then that had happened, and then one of his friends got thrown out of a window, and like a lot of his research actually did survive, and a lot of the machines survived, but he was so devastated of all the things that were happening to him, these like subversive things. And he actually won his court case because I think they were concerned he didn't have a medical license, and then there was people trying to steal his technology. And this is the head of AMA, which actually I think eventually got like hit with fraud charges and stuff like that. So these are the same scumbags that are doing the things that we're seeing today. And so it's topical, which is why I think it's worth bringing up, because today we're seeing, the greatest assault against human liberty like ever, maybe.
Right. Certainly
Yes.
seems that way. And yeah, even his Wikipedia article is hilarious. It's like, these several paragraphs, but everything is just how wicked this guy was, how he caused so many deaths. And of course, many people know about Rife devices or these Rife machines because Bob from Globebusters talks about it all the time. He thinks that the machine is a godsend. And
Yeah,
many
amazing.
people do, and they still sell them. But of course, they have to be unregistered now because, of course, this is not something the American Medical Association wants anything to do with. It doesn't help make them money.
Yeah, it's the same with that and stem cells as well. You know, they find ways of suppressing those, and they have, you know, like they'll put you on immunosuppressants because they'll say, oh, you know, your body has to accept them. But that's actually the opposite of what you should do because your immune system's tasked with clearing out cells. So you should never tone down the immune system. And then sometimes they just don't give high enough doses and stuff like that. But yeah, stem cells are like miraculous. I mean, what better thing to cure you than your own God-given cells and body, right? And so between that and Royal Rife stuff, I mean, I'm convinced that the medical industry has no intention of curing anything, and I feel that they're the cause, in a sense, of disease. And I hope this doesn't sound contentious, but the thing was, is when I got into flat Earth, and you know, I'd always been, of course, very skeptical of all the things I hear in the medical industry, just from personal experience and seeing all the havoc that ruins people's lives and stuff like that. So, you know, of course, we see firsthand experiences, loved ones, and things like that, getting screwed by the medical industry. But you know, it's more than that, and I ended up questioning a lot of foundational theories. Like I was like, well, wait a minute. You know, if the Earth is flat, I was like, are all those other things that they say that they can see but we can't see, like, are those things even real?
Right.
You
That's
know,
that's the key, right?
like
That's when you start really, it piques your interest when all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, there can always be a lie when they're talking about things that we can't see ourselves. And
right.
of
Yeah.
course, when you get into, you know, they say they can see you know, they can't see an atom, but they can tell you all the things that are going on inside of it. That should
Yep.
be the red flag where you go, hold on, time out.
Oh, the atom, man. Well, that was one of the first ones I went after. And this is also something I mentioned in my documentary, which was Nikola Tesla didn't believe in the atom molecule.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like here you have one of the world's greatest geniuses. And it's interesting when you compare him to Einstein and you say, okay, what did Einstein like invent? Like, what did he build? What did he make? It's like,
Right.
so then what kind of a scientist are you if you can't even make something? Because inventions and construction and those types of things, engineering, is an example of ingenuity and taking what you've learned in experiment and applying it in practice. And if you can't do that, then I'm not sure what the point of your
Right.
scientific inquiry even is. So you have a guy like Tesla who didn't believe in the atom molecule and didn't believe in relativity and stuff like that. And of course, all that's covered in the documentary. But yeah, so then I questioned the theory of virology and found out I was not alone. And so there's guys like Stefan Lanka, which you said you guys have talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and his you know documentary, The Microspace Hoax. Well, actually, whose documentary was that? I think you had mentioned it before. It was
Well, Curious Life did one.
Curious Life. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still floating around a few places, but I have links in the description to at least part of that video, which is called Microspace, a Deadly Hoax.
Mhm.
Cosmic Surfer, I think, reposted some of that. And then we have
Yeah, it's like 40 minutes long. So if that's one you have, then that's the right one.
No, this
And-
one's only 15 minutes now. I think I do have the other one. Give me a second, and I'll bring that up. That was, I think it is in the description. Let me check just to make sure I put that in there. Oh, it's the one, Our Virus is Real. Isn't that what it's called or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. It used to be called Microspace Hoax, and it was on 07s or whatever. But you know, YouTube's been removing channels and videos left
Right.
and right,
Of course.
and unbelievable, man. The level of censorship that I've been seeing, and the assault on human rights, and this whole potato virus nonsense. Yeah, it's just sad. And even for the first few weeks, as I'd told you before, I was looking for people who were asking about like our human rights, you know, and nobody was doing it. Nobody was like, hey, you know, what happened to the Constitution? Or wait, why are we quarantining healthy people? And like, what? Why are people going on respirators and, you know, and not following standard procedure when you have a flu? Because coronavirus is just a flu, right?
Right.
And it's just the things that are happening are so crazy and so outlandish. It's almost as if it's like a scene right out of They Live or Idiocracy or something like that. It's
both.
mind blowing.
Yeah, so this is the video here. I do have a link in the description called Do Viruses Exist? Francis Judge II has that on their channel. But again, these are the kind of things, these are the problems that we have is these videos don't stay up for very long. So check it out now. It says mirrored from Flat Water, Flat Earth. So thank you. I couldn't find the original there, so I don't know if it came down or what.
Archive it.
Yeah, please.
You know, I've been archiving stuff for years because I know that I've been noticing this since many years ago. I didn't think it would ever get this bad, but it's no surprise.
No, it's good. I've got a
So
lot of this stuff saved. The problem is then when I want to show people where it is, then I have to go and look on YouTube until I find it. Because I've got
yeah.
it on my computer, but luckily I still have some of the links. So there is this one that's in the description, like we said, and then also the Microspace, a Deadly Hoax is just a shorter version of what Curious Life had originally put out. But go ahead anyway.
So yeah. So anyway, so that's Royal Rife, and he made a resurgence. He made a resurgence when people started. There was the internet, and then people were like, "Hey, don't you remember that like guy, that like genius?" And and so they started talking about him, and they put out this book called The Cancer Cure That Worked, which was super popular, and then yeah, and so then people started. Well, there was people that were already interested in his research and then making machines, and then it is true a little bit, like it is hard to distinguish like which, like if somebody's just trying to sell you like a hoax versus like the actual Rife's technology. So that is important to know, because if you really want to get a hold of what Rife had,
Right.
ahead of anything else. Like I had a friend who had cancer, and I like begged him. I was like, look, man, I was like, go find an old. If you ever do me a favor, just find an old Rife machine, And then he's like, okay, and he went out and he found one, and he got cured within 2 months. And the doctor that had diagnosed him was such a jerk that he couldn't even acknowledge that it was a thing and that it worked.
Right.
And he's like, oh well, you probably just didn't have cancer. It's just like,
I probably misdiagnosed you. My bad.
yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, malpractice then. And it's just,
Right.
yeah, anyway. So, obviously that leads into the Corona stuff, but I know that you guys have been talking a lot about that, and you've ripped it to pieces,
Well,
and
I still
kudos to you, and good job. And I know people are always asking, like, well, why don't they talk about flat Earth anymore?
Yeah, we get that.
And it is important, and so that's why we're going to go over the FAQ, right? So
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can spend 2 minutes on Corona if you want. And people who are looking for talk, I mean, obviously Friday's Lounge, we've done a pretty decent job of at least spending an hour or so kind of updating. And of course, right now Corona's dying down because of all these protests, but we're just being bombarded by nonsense from every direction. But I guess people might want to know. They don't get to hear from you much. So tell us your opinion of it real quick.
yeah, so I'll give my opinion, not just of Corona, but basically the whole rundown of what I've learned. Okay, so the thing is I think people get very, very abstract in their beliefs. They get stuck in what, some sort of narrative, what the news says, what their schools are teaching them, or even some of their own ideas and contentions. And I think the most important thing is being skeptical of your own beliefs. I remember one time I was fighting with a friend over 9/11, and he was saying, oh, he's like, but how much, he's like, if you were as skeptical of your own beliefs as you are of the government, then, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what, man, he's right. And so I started really questioning my own beliefs. Like if I believe in Royal Raymond Rife, but I don't have access to his microscope, so then how do I go and independently verify it? Well, the good thing is that there is a lot of people that show videos, including people who'd covered Rife, of his microscope like bursting bacteria and causing them to burst with harmonic frequencies. So that's like a thing. And seeing is believing, and but of course, like we know in today's day and age, things are even worse now, and the propaganda is so heavy. So I started to just think about it, and I was like, you know what, flat Earth is actually like a minimalistic theory. So it's just the belief that I believe what I can prove. So if I can go out and say, okay, I'm going to measure curvature, and if I don't find curvature, then I'm going to say, you know what, I didn't find any curvature, it came back negative. Right. So I'm not going to go ahead and push the contention that the Earth is round. And then if you go look up at the stars and you really just don't know what they are, then why would you argue, oh, they're suns, or they're this, or they're that? Why can't you just be humble and say they're lights? I mean, is that so bad? And people will mock you. They'll say, oh, what an idiot, man. He thinks the stars and the moon and the sun are lights.
Exactly.
It's like, well, wait, do you have proof to the contrary?
No, they don't.
So with that,
and I've gotten to the point now where it's just not even worth arguing with people that don't want to hear it anymore, because you're right. It's not a positive claim. I'm not going out and I'm not saying, here's how the Earth is shaped and here's how it works, and I know everything about it, and I know how the sun moves, and I because I don't, but I'm able to explore other options, which is something other people don't have the ability to do anymore. They block that off. They won't even explore other ideas.
So with that said, and leading into your question, and sorry I diverged a little bit, but the what I'm getting at is that I took the same approach to illnesses, and I said to myself, now wait a minute. Okay, this theory that this invisible strip of spore junk from a cell that you can only really see through a gyroscope, and you get out the debris and then you look through it and then you can identify the virus, and only like a handful of people in the world can even do it. And I'm like, so, and then they say this invisible thing wants to get you, and change your cell and all this other stuff, but it's not alive anyway, which is weird. So I just thought the whole theory was just weird. I'm like, how did they even prove it? Like, where did this come from? And so, there are virologists like Stefan Lanka who are out there, carrying that torch, and that's fine. And it wasn't mine to carry. I kind of thought about it like, you know what? I'm going to start simple. I'm going to start with the things that I can prove. So what can I prove about illness, right? Well, I know I can prove that if I pick up a medicine from the store, it's going to tell me all the things that it can do to me. So it'll be like, oh, your eyes can bleed, or your face falls off, or whatever, or instant death, or heart attack, or brain problems, or whatever. And the side effects on most of the medicines are worse than the condition you're suffering from. So like, and I've experienced side effects from medicines firsthand that weren't psychosomatic, Mm-hmm. They were like, I had the side effect, and then I checked the medicine and I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is exactly what I have. And, so, yeah, so there's that. And so then I said, okay, so then there's one cause of disease right there, is medicines. And then another cause, of course, is injury, old age. And just lots of things, right? So I was like, and yeah, bacteria, you could get bit by an animal, and the animal could have all this bacteria in its mouth that's foreign to your body, and then you could get sick, right? I don't rule that out.
No, I didn't know that.
So there are things there, but I don't feel like bacteria is honestly a very common cause for disease. And usually it's probably internal, because it's like an overgrowth or something like that. I mean, I know that that's what Rife had thought, is a lot of times it's due to metabolic problems and things like that. So, and of course we're still researching. It's like when you look at the body's not like a car. It's not simple. And it's like, okay, I just fix the alternator and it works. It's like, no, it's extremely maddeningly complicated.
Right.
So why is it that we're just trivializing, public health? We shouldn't, and we should realize that we should work first with the things that we know. And when we eliminate those things, then we get rid of those causal agents. So first of all, get rid of all these unnecessary medicines, and people flush them down the toilet and they get in the water supply. So is it really any surprise that people get sick and they go crazy?
Right.
So as far as corona, I mean, I always tell people there's 1,000 different ways the government can get people sick if they want. Expanding on Royal Rife, you have harmonic frequencies, and harmonic frequencies can be very similar to the 5G thing that people are claiming. I'm not going to claim that because, again, I can't prove it, but I do know that harmonic frequencies can cause bacteria to be killed. So there's no reason as to why special frequencies can't be used to cause perhaps your blood to change and how it coagulates. I've heard some people say it emulates altitude sickness or whatever. I don't know. And it's a really good question. But I think that the point is that if the government wants to get people sick, they can put stuff in the air, they can put stuff in the food, they can do it when you get to the hospital. You come in with a cold, you're freaking out, you're stressed out, they put you on a respirator, you shouldn't be on a respirator, or they put you in quarantine, they give you some med. And then there's already evidence that the government has used meds to hurt people, and they have admitted it. It's not a conspiracy. It's MK Ultra, which you guys have probably covered,
right?
And an MK Ultra program, which Bill Clinton publicly apologized for. He said, oh well, we're sorry, we got, we weren't giving people informed consent, and they would go in thinking they're getting one treatment and they're actually getting something else. Mm-hmm. So if they've already done that and the military's already done that, then why are we to think that they're not doing that right now?
Right.
And if you go in with corona and you get something, and no matter what it is, if you take something, and then how do you know the military is not looking right at that and trying to get a couple people sick, because really they only need to get a few people sick legitimately to scare everyone.
Right.
If they can target, like New York, or they can go target, Italy and Wuhan and London, which just so happen to be some of the biggest epicenters of commerce in the world. So that's kind of a coincidence, right? And then all these other little places, they don't really have a problem. So yeah, I mean, it's strange. And then, there's proof they manipulate statistics, because they admit they manipulate statistics. So,
Right.
I mean, it's like beating a dead horse. It's obvious. And I also feel like if you are a prisoner in your own home and you don't get it by now, you're never going to get it. Like,
No, yeah.
you know what I mean?
If this hasn't alerted you to something's wrong, I don't know what will.
Yeah, it's so bad. If you go out, I mean, somebody just tried to take my temperature yesterday because I wanted to go to the beach. I mean,
Right.
are you kidding me? Like they wanted to put this thing in my ear. I was like, no, get away from me.
Right.
Like, I refuse, like, to put on masks. I refuse to, do those things that people make me do. And I've had to, unfortunately, there's a lot of businesses that I won't go into until they cut the nonsense. Like, I want to see people's smiling faces. I want to go out and, see the world happy and restored. But really, if it was all true, then I'd rather frickin' die. If this is the case, then,
Right.
like, fine, I'd rather get sick and die than live in a world where it's like the death of fun and the death of all things cool.
Right.
What, you can't travel, you can't even go out and eat, you can't leave your home. What kind of a life is that? Like, who wants to live like that? That's pathetic.
That's what I've
Like,
said. There's so much more to life than worrying about death.
this
You cannot just spend life worried about death at every corner. I was going to die. When am I going to die? Tomorrow? Is it going to be the next day? That's no life you want to live.
Yeah, and it's turning people into, hypochondriacs, like, almost overnight.
Oh, big
And
time.
and now everybody is, like, compulsively cleaning countertops, it's sad. And like, it's so psychologically damaging that I don't know how we can even go backwards from here. Like, how can society look at what's happened today and then be like, okay, now it's okay, everyone. You don't have to be freaked out and scared anymore. Like, people are unfortunately very fragile, and when you do this to their psychology, it's really hard to go backwards. So yeah, I mean, that's my take on that. But yeah, I know a lot of your listeners have probably been jonesing for some flat Earth stuff, so I think we should get into that, and I'll go over the FAQ and discuss some of the things and what was going through my head when I wrote them.
Good. Yeah, I think that's a great thing. Yeah, there's a lot of people asking for that, and you never can please everybody because, of course, half the crowd will say now, oh, we should be talking about Corona. The other half saying we should be talking about flat Earth. So we will do a
they're
little bit
both
of flat Earth
important.
today. Very important. And they both tie in together, as Dave Weiss and I talked about on Veritas. They do tie right along together. And I mean, most people know my opinion on a lot of these questions. So I do want to sit back and listen to Triple R's, why he included these in his FAQs, why he finds them important, and then also chiming in when I think that there's some good answers. So we don't know how many we're going to get through today. If we get through them all, that would be amazing. If we get through half and we say we're going to do half next week, we don't know what's going on. We're flying by the seat of our pants. So we will see how it goes. But let me bring up question number 1, and we can start from there. First of all, again, one more time, the FAQ, if you want a copy, bit.ly/FEFAQ. Pick up a copy, pass it out to your friends and family, although it is 30 pages or 30-plus pages. It might be 33 pages, so watch out. We're going to get some
Accusations.
Yeah, be ready. Here they come. I don't know if you've put Research Royal Rife through the Germatrinator yet, but that might add up to 33 as well, or 66. We're in trouble. But who knows? We'll have to see. So let's see here. I'm trying to get something up here. Okay, there we go. So the first question that was on your FAQs, which I like, is what are the greatest proofs of a flat Earth? Interesting to start the FAQ with that one, but I think it's good to let people know that there are proofs of a flat Earth.
Right. So, yeah, obviously some of the most major things is like, yeah, we can see too far. I think just day-to-day experiences, being able to see boats like really far out, like, 10, 15 miles away. The globe has to basically reconcile the idea that, okay, that they're saying that there's enough refraction to bring that up precisely to where it can be visible again.
Right.
And that is a surprising coincidence if true. And I wouldn't dismiss it, but I think it's a tremendous proof of the flat Earth because it's not just boats. We can go and see things out 40, 50 miles away, as many of you guys have shown. And also just, like when we send up, of course, the high altitude balloons and things like that, we don't see any horizontal bow. And also in Eric Dubé's 200 Proofs, Earth is Not a Spinning Ball, I haven't independently checked all of these, but I know that there's a lot of ones that he mentions where there's no horizontal bow. Like you look at the mouth of certain islands or you look at the mouths of certain adjacent objects and you notice that there's no like dip at all. And
Right.
so that's kind of interesting to me because then it'd say, okay, well, if there's refraction coming towards me, well, what about across? And I would like to see some interesting experiment. I'd like to see an experiment with like you take up like 3 hot air balloons and then like just keep them on the same plane and then like do it over like a frozen lake or something and then see if you can see a horizontal change between the middle one and the end ones. But then maybe you could argue with the lens, the way that the angle is to the middle one, to the left and the right ones.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you could.
Yeah, it's
you could
interesting because
make an
we see in a
argument there,
circle,
too,
and
so.
that does cause us to see in a circle, all the time. Obviously, your eyesight is the radius of a circle, but you were covering some of the greatest proofs. Canigou is one, and people need to understand that when you're talking about seeing something 175 miles away, and again, yes, the globe answer for that is always refraction or looming. It's being lifted up from behind the horizon, but again, then we don't see it until the sun sets behind it. Obviously, then it creates a silhouette, and we can actually see the full mountain range there, which is a 9,000 foot high mountain. You can see it from 1,000 feet across 175 miles, which is simply impossible. That mountain should be several thousand feet below the horizon, the curvature. Now, we see that all over the place, whether it's Chicago, whether we're looking at, like you said, boats. So one of the easiest things is simply we see too far. The other one is laser experiments. We also have done sun flash, mirror flash experiments, constantly seeing things that we shouldn't be able to see over and over again. So it's definitely one.
Yeah, I mean, lasers and mirrors. Of course, we always have to give to the possibility of refraction, and of course, over long distances, little bits of refraction can be very subtle. But I mean, at the end of the day, the globe model still is trying to basically conveniently dismiss the entire thing, which I think is just ridiculous.
Well,
I mean, this is if
speaking of
you're
being-
really honest and scientifically honest to debate these things, you have to ask yourself, well, if this is a negative proof of a globe, so this shouldn't be
Right.
something that's so easily dismissed. If we're really going to contend that because of the globe that it's refraction, then how do we even go about proving that? And to say that it holds these things above the horizon just enough, to be exactly where they are. Like, why don't they go a little higher or something like that? And it just seems to be just enough to dismiss. And a lot of the things that they have are always plausibly deniable. But with that said, we go up, we don't see a rising, horizon line. We don't see, a horizontal bow. We don't see them on adjacent islands. We don't see them on the mouths of islands. So we don't even see that. We go up in a plane, we don't see with the infrared footage, and we just don't see any evidence of curvature.
Right.
There's tests done over frozen lakes, which are interesting. And then, I also mentioned here Captain Cook, who I know everybody likes to go, refer back to him, even though it's a long time ago. And, of course, it's history, so who knows? But, I mean, they say he circumnavigated some 50K miles or whatever. And hold on. Can I give me a minute?
Sure.
Actually, one second.
No problem.
Te llamo más adelante, ¿ok? Estoy dentro una cita. Okay, gracias.
You back?
Okay, hello? Sorry, somebody was just blowing up my phone.
No problem.
Excuse me. And even we've looked at modern circumnavigation. So, like, there was that girl who circumnavigated, was it like east-west? And then she, like, if you look at the amount of knots that she was traveling, I think you mentioned this
Right.
to me the other day. She was only traveling, like, a few knots or something?
Yeah, in a boat that should be
that was
doing
capable of
far more.
going way fast.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's just absurd. And then, like, she cut her voyage, I think, early, and then didn't even finish the whole circumnavigation. So there's so many issues with modern circumnavigations. There's no, around the South. But those are kind of like, until I feel like when we're going to have like 100% ironclad proof is when we have more modern day circumnavigations. So I would love to see somebody do a open source kind of design for a balloon that could travel automatically, like following the sun perhaps, and try to go around, circumnavigate over the east to west. I mean, I realize that there's the jet stream and there's other things, so I don't know if it's better to use a balloon or a drone or a little submarine, or I don't know. It's a really good question. But if we had a way to do it autonomously so nobody gets hurt, that would be great.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that they won't allow you to bring extra fuel with you if you go below the 60-degree marker. If you're talking about a boat, there's just like so many things put in place.
Well, it'd have to be solar powered.
Yeah, so because there's so many things put in place that seem to block you from ever trying. I mean, if there was like a Hindenburg type ship, wouldn't that be awesome if we could just get up there and just go? But obviously those have been smashed. They don't want those out there anymore.
I feel like that industry was sabotaged on it's like another topic, which is interesting. I feel like that the Hindenburg was maybe sabotaged, or the whole airship industry was sabotaged, because you'd think it's like kind of an easy way to spy on things and an easy way to, just send something out there. And
sure,
I don't know.
Or you and I just doing a crowdfunding and then going south. Just, hey, let's get 20 of us and let's pop in this craft and just go south and see what happens. Well, they can't have that.
I just wouldn't want people to be at risk, So I think if anything is ever designed, it should be something that's like open source, so that people can really just go around, and then plus other people would be able to replicate it. But you know how it is with the military. I mean, they're going to dismiss it anyway, and then they'll try to shoot it down. So there is that. But the point is, it really isn't. It's, at the end of the day, it's not about what they say or think. It's about what's true. Right. And if we're fighting on the side of, all things that are good and spiritually sound and important, then we should be out there caring more about the truth than about what the world thinks about it. So you know what? If I'm the last man standing and I don't believe, or you're we're the last people standing and we don't believe in the stuff that they're saying, then great. I mean,
it doesn't bother me.
We're standing up for what's true. And if the whole world's saying that blue is red, and I'll still swear up and down that that's not the case.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me even if I'm the last one left. And yeah, it's been said before that the truth is the truth, even if no one believes it. So it's just the way it goes.
Okay, so
want to go to the next
one? Let's get through some of these, because there's like 70 of them.
Yeah. So next one is, how does the sun set on a flat Earth?
Right. So this one, and it's very similar to the answer to a lot of things, but I think that it doesn't get mentioned enough, and that's just atmospheric magnification and lensing and refraction. So I know Rob Skiba had a video on it, which was really cool, and he showed like how you use those little magnifying sheets and stuff. And I think that is one of the easier explanations for how things set, how things go over the horizon. Of course, there's perspective as well, but we also want to take into account that the sun keeps its diameter, and I'll get more into that later as well. But yeah, so the most important part is that, we know that, and this is actually more permissible on a flat Earth than it would be on a globe, because we're not having, things, if the Earth was flat, then, you wouldn't have just the precise amount of magnification to have something be brought exactly back up over the horizon. No, I mean, it's just natural. It's like, okay, the bottom of this building's getting cut off because it's really far away. Mm. You know what I mean? So I think it's very common sense. And also, I want to say this first too, is if you start with minimal assumptions and you start with nothing and you say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out where we are and where we live. So you would then start to explain how something could be on a flat Earth. So when people say, oh, the Earth couldn't be flat because of this, and it's like, well, no, of course it could be. Like if people say, oh, it can't be flat, GPS. It's like, GPS is just a coordinate system.
Right.
Are you telling me a coordinate system doesn't work on a table? It only works on a basketball?
Right. No, you can do it on the table.
What are you talking about? So some of the things that people use to dismiss a flat Earth are just totally nuts. They don't make sense. So if we just say like, well, this is how it could work if the Earth is flat. So
and wouldn't it be possible? I've said it many times, but if people lived on a table, it would be very easy to convince them that they lived on a spherical structure by just the way that you mapped it out.
Yeah,
Just map it out
exactly.
and use GPS and say, no, you're actually on a sphere. And by the way, folks, again, we're not reading the answer verbatim from the FAQs. You still want to check that out yourself. We're just kind of highlighting each one of them to give you a little idea and maybe mention why he included them. But if you're looking for more detail, there's tons out there. And this is really more than to let people who maybe don't know about Flat Earth. This is, I think, a helpful thing for people who know about it, who just don't know how to really go out and talk about it. Maybe they don't know how to have a conversation with their friends, with their family. This just helps a little bit. Maybe it gives you a few firing points. But again, also could help those that have never heard it before. Sometimes it just takes that planting of the seed. And that's what really all we try and do. That's what it took me to become a flat earther. Same thing, I'm sure, with Triple R here. I'm sure with everybody else. It takes a little bit. You hear it, you think it's crazy. You hear it, you think it's nonsense. And then all of a sudden there's something that either you observe in your everyday life or that reminds you of something that you've seen, and then all of a sudden you start to question it. And once you realize that you're being lied to on a mass level, then the question becomes, well, what wouldn't they lie about? And, we'll talk about the moon landing in a little bit, but again, that's the easiest one for me, that if you got somebody there, that I would consider somebody who's on the ropes. They're ready for a knockout blow. Once they realize that we haven't been to the moon and that NASA has kept up a huge lie, and for 50 years, and every time they see you and talk to you, and every time they put something on the internet or anything, they are enforcing that lie and reminding you over and over again, we went to the moon, remember the Apollo missions, we went to the moon, remember the Apollo missions. There has to be a reason for that. It's not just, and then again, why haven't we gone back? So many questions. Triple R and I were talking yesterday about, or maybe it was the day before, whatever. We were just saying that it's hilarious that there's no camera on the moon. There's so many of these things, these little things that just keep coming up, but that's an important one too. But anyway, any other ones for how does the sun set? Oh, one thing I always describe real quick, just because I think it's a good picture in your mind, because I get so many people who tell me, well, how could it be dark on one side of the earth and not on the other? It doesn't make any sense. It should be all dark or all light. And you really just need to look at the room that you're in right now. There's probably an 8-foot ceiling in whatever room you're in. If not, imagine that it's an 8-foot ceiling. Now picture that room gets increasingly larger, and I mean 3 miles by 3 miles. Well, that's a huge room. You're not even going to be able to see the wall on the other side. Why? Because the ceiling will meet with the floor at a certain distance. So all of a sudden, if you placed a light up on the ceiling of that room and the light started to go away from you, before it got to the other side of the room, that light would eclipse itself. It would disappear. It would go behind the horizon line, and it would get dark where you're at, even though the light is still on the other side of the room. So it's...
Well, I think there's other examples as well. Like if you look at a foggy day and then you look at like a light on the street, obviously if you walk right up to the light, it's brighter. And the further you go away from it, the darker it gets gradually. It's really obvious. I don't even know why people ask that question. It doesn't make any sense. If you go underwater and then there's a light underwater, it'll be most bright near the light, and the further you move away, it'll get darker. And we have all that stuff in the atmosphere.
Absolutely.
And in my documentary, I talk a lot about the atmosphere and how it's a gradient, and how things as you go up, it gets thinner. And of course the elements change, which is something that I talk about, because if the elements change, then that's going to slightly change the behavior of the light. And I don't feel like it's something that you can just trivialize and be like, oh, we just, because they always say like they just have a standard model for it, which actually still would work with a flat earth anyway, because it's been computer modeled and they have it working just fine. But even without that, you can't just trivialize something. If it's over 100 miles, it's way different from if it's 2 feet in front of you.
Right,
and people's experiments are only based. When you have a model for something, that's based on your observations. So if you have something that you measure in a lab, then you say, okay, this is the law. But if you find out that when you measure something over much, much larger distances and then it behaves slightly differently, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Right. This isn't exactly we have to modify our theory, because now we have new experimental data that shows something slightly different. And when you think about the complexity, it's like it's compound. If you compound a small change and then you go a little bit further and it's 1% and then another 1% and then another 1%, it's compound, and it gets to be quite dramatic after a while. And so small changes of different things in our atmosphere, that's how they behave. And that's why I also mentioned in the FAQ, right at this part, I talk about advanced sunrise and delayed sunset. So you really people who say that this isn't a thing and that the sun can't be changed in position. I had a friend telling me that, and it was just ridiculous because it's like he didn't even know that according to the standard model, that's what they say happens. So they say that the sun, when you look at it, you're not really looking at the sun. You're looking at the apparent sun, but the actual sun is actually like a degree or two above or below, you know? And they even have things like examples in the heliocentric model where the sun will set and then rise and then set and then rise. So I had covered that in my documentary because I felt it was important because people should know that there's already evidence of that. So to say that it wouldn't work on a flat Earth is it's just nonsense. But we'll get into that more too, because some of the other questions circle back to kind of things that complete that even more.
Sure. Yeah, you end that
okay,
one by saying, however, the things most people seem to forget about are air density and refraction / Snell's law. And the next question was, what is Snell's law?
Right. So Snell's law is basically what, we have the rule for how things do refract from changing from one medium to another. So if you change from air to water or even helium, to hydrogen or whatever, as long as the medium changes or the density of the medium and different things change, then the angle and the speed of light are going to change. So with that said, I have this thing that really bugs me about the heliocentric model is that they're saying that the stars are like a billion gazillion miles away. And it's like, well, people always think of refraction, they think of it in our atmosphere, but they don't consider it from the origin of where the star is coming from. So like if the star refracts over there, then how could it get to my eye? Because it's going to be like a margin of error is much higher the greater the distance. So if something's really, really, really far away and then it diverts by a tenth of a degree or a trillionth of a degree even, then that is going to be off by that amount for that distance. So it's going to carry like a tremendous distance to be completely off. It's like I give the analogy of a pool game. So if you're shooting pool and you have a shot that's like really, really short and you hit the cue ball and into the ball and it's like super short, then it's easier to make.
Right.
But if you try to shoot, the hardest shots in pool are long distance. So when you go the full distance of the table, even professionals sometimes mess them up because they can't position their shot, and it's just really hard. And imagine if you
if it's a table
the
that's
size of
10 pool tables big. Imagine that distance shot. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Or 1,000,
right.
Or how about 1,000,000? And when they're talking about distances of stars and those lights, they're talking
trillions
about
of miles.
Yeah, quadrillions or quintillions of miles. It's like, get out of here.
That's
like,
so
how can you
stupid.
say that light is traveling that distance and that from the first million or billion miles that light travels, that it doesn't change from hydrogen to helium or there's no variance in the density of the mediums? And like they'll say, oh well, space just isn't dense enough. But it carries a long distance. It's gonna be after you go a million miles or a billion miles. I mean, think of, there must be something there. And then they're saying that we get to see asteroids and we have all this asteroid belt and all this other space junk, which magically comes to visit us. So if that's really true, then what about all the space junk over there?
Right.
How come that? So there must be something in the void.
Right. I guess
there must be some debris
or
elements or something, that's there, because if there's flying asteroid nonsense, then that has to be there. And then there couldn't be any other, galaxies or other stars in the way. So they go as far as to say that the universe is flat or the galaxy is flat or the solar system is flat. And they have the nerve to call us flat earthers.
Right.
It's like, how can you be so hypocritical? You're saying that, oh, it's impossible for the earth to be a table, but the galaxy can be a table.
Right.
It can be totally perfectly flat like a pancake. And you could pull up articles and show your viewers if you want, that they'll say that NASA will say, oh, they think the galaxy is flat. So the reason why they say those things is, and that's why Robotham, which Eric Dubé, I think, based a lot of his stuff off of, they called him parallax. And I'm going to guess that's because he was contending that there was no parallax. So he looked at the stars and he said, I don't see... There's no change in the star's behavior, pattern, position. They're not unstable. So you're talking about something traveling quintillions of miles or quadrillions of miles, and it's stable. I mean, that's nuts. And you're still able to see it in the sky in its fixed position, and it just doesn't oscillate. It doesn't. I feel that if there was any elements like back there that would change, or a change in the density, or just that it gets blocked, then those things would just disappear. You know, like stars would just permanently disappear and then reappear later, because then it would, you know, whatever was blocking it would unblock it, or it just wouldn't be stable. So I have a very hard time suspending disbelief and assuming that, you know, those things are true. But even if I do give them that, then there's still the fact that why are they saying then that the galaxy is flat and the solar system is flat, as if these things have no regard for the z-axis. And then they're going to say, oh, well, it was like a billion zillion years. It's like, okay, well, then show me a computer model of things randomly going around a like a bunch of things going around a central point, right? But there's gravity, so they can move in all directions. Because the thing is like they're saying that collisions would cause that to happen, but that couldn't be, because if things keep colliding, they don't have to be on the same plane. They only have to not intersect, which means they can be on the horizontal plane, but they can also be on the vertical plane and never intersect, ever, because their orbits now have gone that way, you see? So I don't see why they feel like the things, and maybe there's an answer to this. I wouldn't mind if somebody gave me an answer as to why they think it would all be on one plane, but I find it very unbelievable. I'd like to see an open source computer model for that. I just think it's ridiculous that they think that everything is flat on a solar system, and then that we're at that point in time. Like, why aren't we at the point in time where we're seeing things not be that way? You know? So now it's like we're serendipitously at that point in time. So I'm sorry, I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent, but
this is great.
I think
this
it's
is
good
why,
to keep...
by the way, folks, this is why I invited him on the show. Because when I talk to him privately, he goes off on these tangents with me, and I'm always telling him, dude, will you say that on my channel? I'm tired of you talking to me only. I need you to talk to other people. By the way, we did get a couple super chats to start off. The first one from Gobeki T. He said, mind-blowing information indeed, bro. Thank you very much. Lincoln Sharp says, this is great at jeranism. My FAQ is, what is the third large celestial object that covers the moon? I'll film the lunar eclipse tomorrow morning from the outback here in South Australia. All right, good to know that that's one of your FAQs. And, you know, the easiest answer to that is we don't know.
Oh, okay. So there's this idea that there's another object that covers the moon, and then they call it Rahu. Right. So the old religions called it like the black sun or whatever. And so they think that there's like this completely black disk that will cover over the moon and cause things like eclipses and maybe even, you know, stuff like that. So it's just interesting. I don't know if that's particularly what I would subscribe to, but I will say and go back to my original statement, which was, as far as we look at stars and the sun and the moon, we're going to first state that they're lights. And then as scientists, we'll go forward and see what we think we can come up with. You know, so there is the heliocentric model, but as far as the flat Earth model, we're working with an intelligent design system. And on a system that's intelligent design, I feel like you have a lot more flexibility with how to make it. So let's take an example. If I look at my computer, right, and I say, and let's say we tried to explain my computer without a manufacturer or without a designer. Like if it's like, oh no, a guy built the circuit board. Nope, you can't do it. Sorry, you're not allowed. There's no God. There's no creator, no designer, no aliens, no nothing. You can't ever say that computer was designed by a thing. You know, so that's what the modern heliocentric model is trying to force people to do. They're trying to do everything possible to dismiss the idea of a manufacturer. And so
when it's the easiest explanation that there is.
Yeah, and so try describing a computer without a creator. Like, what are you going to say? Like, oh, the collisions happen to make the processor pieces fall in the exact place.
Oh,
like,
I even know what it was. I even know when that was, and I know what happened 1/1000th of a millionth of a trillionth of a second after that collision of particles.
Right. Right, we measured a frequency from the computer, or, you know, like you're trying to just explain a car, like, oh, the tires just rolled down a hill and then the rubber became this big mass, and because it was rolling, it became a tire, and then they collided with a piece of straight metal, and then the axle was made, and then the frame just fell on it. And then it
Believe
just
us.
perfectly, over years of corrosion, became a car. I mean, what are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's just like, why is it that people can't at least entertain the idea that something built this place, that something created this place? Like, this is why we had thousands of years of religion, and then there's just dismissing it as, oh, it wasn't really popular. Are you kidding me? When we go to school, we're taught that religions dominated everything.
Right.
The Spanish Inquisition, they have all the things, the churches everywhere, the Vatican. I mean, come on, like they had all these, not just Judeo-Abrahamic. I mean, they also have the, Indian and Vedic, and it's not like when the Greeks, quote unquote, discovered the Earth was, around, that did they have the ability to like call the Indians and the Chinese and say, hey, guess what? Abandon all your ancient beliefs. We have this new info. It's not like they could fax them or send them a PM on the internet or something like that. So like to think that these things became consensus when there wasn't a centralized news source back. This is the history we're given, right? I don't know what the real history is, but they're saying that that's the history. So if there was really competing countries and conquistadors and all this other stuff, you don't think that they would have just abandoned their entire culture just because some Greeks were saying something somewhere, and it's just like a tiny little piece of the earth. I mean, yeah, right. And, all of them, Mayans, Aztec, American Indians. And I mean, there was no cultures that really had a heliocentric belief. So they had the idea of a designer. And when they believed in a designer, they would call, say a god or whatever. And then that would give them a ton of flexibility of how the system was designed. Because if you look at the sky and you say, oh, I think the sky was built by something. And then it's like, okay, cool. So if you wanted to build an artificial sky, how would you do it? Like, I guess start with that. Before criticizing the flat earth, first ask yourself, could you make an artificial sky?
Right.
Like, and I mean, I don't want to get people like to be, paranoid or to think that the sky is, something that it's not. But I'm just saying, you look at it, you see lights, and then you think, okay, so if there was a designer, how could the designer build it? And I mean, I guess from the designer's perspective, it's not artificial, right? It's like they're the heavens. It's to glorify the creation. It's to glorify the place that we live in. It's a navigation system. It tells the seasons. I mean, it helps the plants grow. I mean, it does all these wonderful, amazing things. So what's, yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. So anyway, yeah, let's get to the next question, because we'll circle back to some of this stuff anyway. So
okay, next up I have what is the stick and shadow?
Right. So that was the premise for the documentary itself, which was the stick and shadow experiment. And I had noticed that almost nobody was talking about it. And I had felt that was one of the main motivations, because I don't usually come public about things unless I have something to say. It's another reason why I've never really gone on Jaren's show or anything, or just I just don't do that. So, but it was important, and I realized how important it was, and I said, you know what, I'm going to make a documentary. And I'd never made a documentary before. It's the first time I've ever really made one. And but I had something to say, so I went over and I did my experiment at home with the laser and some water to show that stick and shadow is just a simple triangulation experiment. But if you have the light going through, or anything, any object or any visual thing going through a refractive medium, then you can't possibly triangulate it. And I showed that very conclusively in the documentary. So I show, hey, if I tried to triangulate it and I posted my results, then this is not going to lead me back to where the quote unquote sun is supposed to be.
No,
but
again,
if there's no atmosphere, then yes, I can do it.
All their experiments always start out with these assumptions, and the sticks and shadows assumption begins with the sun is an infinite distance away. And so it's very easy for Carl Sagan to come and show you this piece of, whatever it is, poster board with two sticks on it, and he's saying, see, these shadows are identical, but when we bend it, now all of a sudden we see that these shadows have differing angles, and therefore the Earth that you live on is curved. But again, the flat Earth premise is no, the sun is not an infinite distance away. It's very close. And as an example, I've showed it in many of my videos. Take two lighters, take two anything you want, stand them up on your desk, get a small flashlight and put them above one and then the other, and you'll see that the two items on your desk have different angles of shadows. Now, is that because your desk is a spherical ball? No, it's because the light source is close. So it's really that easy. And yet,
Actually, I'm also curious, Jaron, has anybody even done an open source computer model of the heliocentric system doing stick and shadow, but with refraction? Because
yeah,
they
I mean,
always try to just
Dr.
trivialize the whole experiment. They don't talk about refraction in the calculation, like, at all.
Dr.
So
Zach's done a
what
great
happens
video
when
on
you
that. Yeah.
add it with a computer model? Like, would you now prove then that you're going to get these gross errors because the sun's actually, like, the shadow should actually be a little bit more elongated, or the sun's position should be, adjusted a few degrees or something like that? So I'd
Right.
be really curious about, the apparent position of the sun for the refraction added even to the heliocentric model. And I'm going to bet you that if you did it, you'd see some actually some pretty major inconsistencies.
That's why it's just a
from when
story. It's just a story that they tell. It's just a something you would tell children. It's something I've heard people in articles say Aristophanes was their hero. Yeah, it's just that. It's just the kind of story that you tell to get bullshit answers like that out of people.
Yeah, they're hero.
Again, you forget that this guy was 500 miles from the person doing the other end of the experiment. 500 miles back, 2,200 years ago. How did they communicate with each other? How did they? And then
Carrier
come to find
pigeon?
out- yeah, I guess. Hey, go send this guy. Tell him when to do it. It's just a bunch of nonsense. It's just a story, and the story has changed over and over again. Many people have heard towers, then people have heard wells, and then again, I've even seen closer details about the fact that he didn't even have the math to do it at that time. That they wouldn't even have had angles. People forget when the numbers 1 through 9 were invented and came into play. So I mean, this is what
That's
happens
what they
when
say.
history falls
For
apart.
all we know, back then they were so advanced. I mean, look at the pyramids. Like, maybe they were flying around in flying
We
cars
wouldn't know.
or
We wouldn't
flying
know.
houses. Like, it's. I mean, I wasn't. I look at the same way as I look at other things. Like, I wasn't born then. I think history is more like about being adventurous and exploring and learning. And like you say, okay, cool. Like, this is what this guy's journals say. I mean, you can only take it really at face value. You look at journals, you look at historical artifacts, you try to piece together things like it's a puzzle, but you never conclusively put your foot down and say, okay, this is what it is. I mean, I'm sure there's certain kings and queens and people in tremendous power, which they do somewhat know our history because they've been passing them down and they have all that information directly available to them. But as far as what we're given in our schools, we have to assume that it's gone through that filter, and so that it's been filtered through the bullshit of bureaucracy and society, and then it gets to our poor innocent children who have to be, have this shoved down their throat about, who's the first president of the United States? Like, why do I care? How's that going to put food on my plate?
Right.
It's just ridiculous. It's like, wait, how can I make money knowing that? Like, imagine you go in to apply with a job at McDonald's, be like, George Washington.
Right.
Like, what? Can you flip a burger? Like, hey, turn on the fryer.
Right.
Like,
Did
like,
you read your job description?
It's stupid. It's such a waste of potential. I mean, you have all these children, and I mean, I'm assuming it's by design. I don't think that they want people questioning anything, and I think they want like obedient workers, and so that's what that gives them. That gives them people who've, and we've all been through the school system, so I'm not taking a jab at anybody. I know it's painful. It's painful to have to think. It's like, oh my God, I wasted my time. Hopefully in school you got laid. I don't know, had fun, joined an extracurricular activity, met friends. I don't know, like whatever it was. Like, I hope you got something out of it because it probably wasn't an education. So anyway, yeah. So that's stick and shadow. What is buoyancy, and how does the next question? What is buoyancy?
Sure.
How does temperature affect density? So yeah, that's just another thing that we've noticed. When hot heat, things get hot, the heat expands. It changes the density of things, and that also affects things. So that's why balloons rise and stuff like that. And obviously they talk about buoyancy in terms of gravity and its importance there. But I also will get into that later as well, that's the electrostatic theory of gravity. But yeah, so let's go to the next one. How do ships disappear over the horizon? So yeah, it's basically the same thing. We talk about, atmospheric lensing, perspective, of course, your, angular resolution or whatever, wave swell, all different types of things, really. I know, Jaron, you've probably played the Skunk Bay weather time lapse before.
Of course.
On
yeah.
your video?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so That's a great one because it just shows it like right before your eyes that okay, it's very logical to assume that things can go over the horizon on a flat Earth. Um, and yeah, so yeah, that's mostly been covered.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
here I
quite easy.
say,
The fact that you can pull things back.
if you see 50 feet of the bottom of a building cut off from 4 miles away, the water level must only refract by a very, very, very small fraction of a degree. So imagine if people are saying, "Oh, why is the bottom of the building cut off?" And it's just like, well, when you really think about its distance, the amount that's cut off is actually really trivial.
Right.
You're talking about like a fraction of nothing, of a degree of 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 blockage.
And the other thing I
Like
think we're seeing is a huge amount of magnification. When you have magnification, looking out, if the atmosphere is acting like a lens and it's magnifying what you see in the distance, then you might get the bottom part of the building cut off. And I've showed that before, just by putting a box on the carpet, lowering a magnifying glass to the carpet, and you'll actually see that part of the box in the distance will be covered by the carpet. Why? Because the magnifying glass is magnifying what's immediately in front of it, which is carpet, and then also what's off in the distance, which is that box, and it causes it to be cut right in half.
Yep. Yeah, and also the other thing is that Rob Skiba's magnification video
Absolutely.
had a pretty good one about how he was showing like how a building looked to be magnified. So he like was trying to compare the way that he saw it through the telescope versus other things that he saw through the telescope, and he was like looking at their kind of perceptual relative apparent size. And I realize that that's a very loose experiment, and it would be somebody would need to really repeat that and kind of really try to get some more examples of it. But I do feel like it's good information to say, okay, like look, we can even see things on the horizon, and they do appear to be actually magnified slightly. So that's important. So yeah, next one is how can you circumnavigate or go around a flat Earth? I mean, obviously your viewers already know this one, but yeah, we circumnavigate using a compass or a GPS system or a coordinate system, or really when you ask yourself when you're circumnavigating, you always need a method. It's like you can't just be like, okay, I'm going to go in a straight line. Like try
Right.
walking in a straight line,
Yeah, nobody knows
just
what
go
that
ahead, stand somewhere like on a very flat open plane and then just walk in a perfectly straight line. I'm pretty sure you can't do it, but maybe you're some genius that can do it.
Well,
I
people start
don't
thinking,
think
well, I could walk on my sidewalk and my sidewalk straight, yes. But if you expand that and you really start thinking in terms of miles or multiple miles,
yeah.
it just falls apart.
Yeah, it falls apart, and then you have to think, well, then you're going to use a system for navigation, and over a mile, well, of course, if the compass just slightly moves so small in
It would be tiny.
fraction,
You would never know.
Yeah, you would never notice that happening, and then you would just be going in a circle, and GPS is a coordinate system, so but actually, I'm going to take this opportunity to say what I said to you yesterday. It would be nice to actually reduce this FAQ to like really short answers,
Right.
because I've always wondered about the art of saying more with less. So if you ever figure out the secret, Jaron, for sure, let me know, because I don't know how to say more with less.
Let me go back and look at my 450 videos and the 200 Jeranism Raw shows I've done and see if I
can you just like
I'll
reduce
condense
all that
those
to
into
like
one
one
video.
little factoid?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll reduce that to one FAQ and life will be good. No, I mean, and the easiest answer, again, is the east and west are circles. And no matter how people look at that and don't realize that, the North Pole is at the center, and therefore going east or west requires you to go in a circle. It's very easy, even on a globe, to point out that if you tied a string to, let's say there is a pole at the North Pole, if you tied a string around that pole, it doesn't matter how far away you walked. Let's say you walked a mile away from that pole. You would then have to walk in a circle, 3.14 miles, to get back to where you started. And if you pull that out to 10 miles, to 20 miles, 30 miles, no matter how far you pull that out, you're walking in a circle. Now, you would just never notice it. Even with the 1 mile, where you're basically going 3.14 miles around in a circle, the compass is just going to adjust every tiny little bit with every step you take. You'll never notice it. To you, you'll be walking in a very straight line. It's the same thing as if you drive a car and you're taking a turn on a freeway. I mean, the tiniest little turn of the wheel is all it takes, and this would be far less than that. Obviously, imagine a 24,000-mile circumference. You would never notice that the wheel was turned any bit. It would be fractional.
So the next one is what about photos, videos of the Earth? And yeah, I mean that's of course been covered. Well, we know that they use a lot of composite imagery, and also that Japanese Hawaii, well, satellite. I think I saw some people showing how they have on their site, like they have these things that they put on a ball for weather data or whatever. So every single time you really investigate these, it's really unfortunately underwhelming, and we end up
Every
finding
time,
out
man.
how junk it is. And the planets are even worse, of course. Like there's that really hilarious image of Jupiter with the aurora, where it looks like this blue hat they put on it. It's
Absolutely.
really bad looking.
And then you can find the
Um,
original image, and that's been in many of my. Go back and watch my 2019 presentation from Dallas if you haven't seen that yet, but just showing you it's the identical image of Jupiter from 4 years earlier, and then they just release it and say new auroras found on Jupiter, but it's the same image. You can tell without any shadow of a doubt at all that it's the same footage. But this is the problem: is that people have gotten convinced now that when they're shown an image of the Earth from space, that they just defer to the fact that it's real, and there's no reason to do that. It looks like a cartoon. It absolutely looks like a cartoon. So at that point, what is making you jump to the conclusion that it must be real? Well, for a lot of people, it's their deeply held belief that the Earth's a ball.
well, I think also the effect, like the goal of brainwashing must be that people will accept these things blindly. Like if you
Right.
look at like the corona thing, it's like it's amazing the amount of rights that people give up just completely blindly. They don't question it. They just say, hey, you got to quit your job and jail yourself into your home and starve yourself to death. They don't consider the implications of it. They don't consider the implications of destroying the economy, of how many people will die due to stress. Suicide rates have gone up 12-fold. I mean, there's so many things when you talk about like brainwashing people that you say, well, why can't I just convince them? It's just so obvious. Well, it is, but that's why I don't think they care. Because when they compartmentalize things in the military, then they know that there's going to be very gross oversights and errors. But I think that they'd rather have it so that less people know than more people,
Oh,
so if they
absolutely.
can get it to be structured in a way so that certain images from certain, like they'll say a satellite taking images of the Earth, well, it's actually just collecting weather data, and then somebody else actually creates the program to stitch the weather data to a ball, and you know what I mean? So then
Right.
there's that guy that does that one thing, and they all work on different parts of it, and they don't realize that they're working on something that's deceptive or subversive. And so I think that, people who are very dedicated at brainwashing the public. They know that and they don't care. And really, it's like a personal screw you to everybody who's looking at it and paying attention. And they totally thumb their noses at people like us. And it's sad because now the amount of censorship on the internet is so much that you can't even. I mean, it's amazing. I was looking for articles, like just dissenting articles when this stuff first started, and I couldn't find anything. And
Well,
and it's the same with flat Earth being pulled down. And I don't know if you saw the video of the what was it of the it was like the Google CEO was in front of Congress, and then she was like talking
Oh, yeah,
about
the YouTube
flat
CEO, yeah.
Earth, and he's like, "How are you going to get rid of these conspiracy videos? Like
Right.
the Earth is flat and stuff." And she's like, "Oh, well, we're just gonna promote authoritative content, and now they're just deleting videos, so
Yeah,
they
they
admit
delete it
it,
outright. And then
and
also now, and this will be the same thing for this video that we do as soon as it uploads, is all the flat Earth videos now have little links at the bottom to Wikipedia, and it starts out the flat Earth model is an archaic conception of Earth's shape as a planar disk. Many ancient cultures subscribe to a flat Earth cosmography, so they all start out that way.
From what I normally post.
Sorry, just playing that. But they all start off that way, and they love to put some new video at the end of whatever video you're watching. So you're watching a flat Earth video. Well, they're gonna put some Professor Dave or some Simon Dan or some National Geographic. That's how they get you stuck. So there is some ways around that. Of course, David Weiss's app, the Flat Earth Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app, it's a great way to click the the daily featured video, and he links you actually to a playlist instead, so that you don't get stuck by that constant.
well, the answer is get off YouTube.
Right.
Get off YouTube, get off Facebook, get off Google, and stop supporting these services, because they're just censoring everything. And even now with the whole Corona thing, people should really be like, okay, they're even censoring regular
Doctors.
doctors.
Yeah.
They're just
Unless
people
you
who
go by the WHO, unless you spit the exact required rhetoric, you're not allowed to speak anymore. I mean, that is the absolute definite. I mean, it's not even like we're borderline First Amendment rights or anything. This is the complete opposite of that. This is
This
you
is
have
the
to
ultimate
say,
destruction
Right.
of all things good. This is
Right.
like one of the most. I mean, I seriously think like if there is a devil, the devil's like taking notes. They're like, oh shit, that's a good idea. It's like, oh man,
I never
how'd
thought
they
of
come up
that.
with that? Oh, that's brilliant. It's like, and so he's
Right.
just sitting back in awe of how evil they are because this thing is unbelievable.
Right.
I mean,
He's
this
like thinking, I
interferes
would've
with
never
everybody's
gotten away
personal
with
life,
that.
with
I
all
would-
their plans. This
God.
is just killing everything. And then even if things go back to normal, the businesses are behaving ridiculous and they still believe in it. And now you have to deal with generations of people that are going to believe in it. And who knows how long it's going to take for it to die down. And all they really have to do now is milk it the same way they've milked
Right.
every other stupid thing that they've done, like the war on terror, which is ridiculous, and all those other things, And so obviously their control
Well, it's
methods.
like I understood
and,
when they put
mean,
it in school books and they said, okay, we're going to teach this. I understood that. Here's what they're teaching. But then the good thing was, hey, when these people get out of school or when they're not in school, they can look it up for themselves and find out people who speak differently and actually say things differently. But now, when even that is suppressed, then, I mean, look what you got. You've got indoctrination from school. You come out of school, and only those who repeat what you were taught in school are allowed to speak in public or allowed to speak on any platform. So this is what you got now. You've just got nothing but slaves and repeaters and drones and parrots saying those exact things back. That's a scary world to live in. It's one that 1984 told us about. We've seen it talked about for years and years, and we never saw it coming. And now look, it's right here.
Well, we saw it coming, but I think it's just when we hear like fear mongers, like we'll hear like Alex Jones, and he's telling us all these things, and
Right.
we will say, oh, well, he's such a fear monger. But the reality of the situation is he wasn't even that far off.
No, actually, almost everything he said
Sadly.
just eventually came.
I hate to admit it, but because I don't want to know what's going on in the news. I really don't. I want to live a peaceful life, and I want to propose solutions. And that's why when I came to do anything in the flat Earth community, if I'm going to come in empty-handed, forget it. But if I'm going to come in and give you guys some stuff that you haven't heard of or stuff that hasn't been covered, then I'll come and bring something to the table. And I hope that is what I've accomplished. So yeah, and on that note, I want to get through some of these a little quicker.
Yeah, no, we'll be here till tomorrow.
There's certain ones that I want to get to that I feel that are important that I want to cover today.
At this speed, we'll be butting heads with the Friday Lounge tomorrow at noon.
It'll be 7 hours later. We're done.
One thing, real quick, I just want to mention, what about photos, videos of the Earth? I have the same question. You can just turn around on them and go like, what about photos and videos of the Earth? Shouldn't we have tons more? Shouldn't there be a 24-hour camera on the moon showing the Earth at all times? Think how great that would be to show eclipses.
That's actually mentioned in my part about the NASA. So the number one debunk I have to the moon landing is like, yeah, I know it's already been covered, shadows and the space suits and the Van Allen belt and blah, blah, blah. I get it. It totally makes sense. The one question I have for any believer in the moon landing is very simple. Why is there not video footage, like an overwhelming amount of video footage of the Earth from the moon with the astronauts like in the shot? They get on the moon and the first thing they see is the Earth in the sky, right? I mean, wouldn't you be like, oh my God, It's the Earth. What the heck? And they'd you'd freak out. Yeah. Seriously, you'd probably piss your own spacesuit. You'd be like, oh my God, that's the Earth. You'd take the camera, you'd point it to the Earth.
Look what we've done. Look how far we've come. Do you know how far away that is? Look at the Earth. We just came from there. Yeah, David Weiss and I said we were going to do a video one time that was going to be like what it should have been like when they landed on the moon, not 2 miles ago, 20 feet. 10 feet.
Exactly. And we have no footage of it. So that right there, I mean, I don't even know how you can argue. Just basic common sense, human psychology. Like these people would have to be inhuman to not. And it's not just one set of guys. It's like every single time they went to the moon, they didn't do it.
Right.
So yeah, that's a big problem. And I mean, like you said, anybody who believes that we went to anybody who believes we went to the moon is definitely on the borderline of the around and flat Earth. And I think what they have to ask themselves is this: like, look, if you don't believe that we went to the moon, really ask yourself why, right? There has to be a motive. Like, would you think that the motive would just be embezzling money? Because yeah, that could be a big motive. I mean, you like retire, make billions of dollars, but then you have to walk around the rest of your life a liar, and that's and maintain it, and they've maintained it really well. And I just feel like if you're gonna go that far, then it must be something important that they're hiding, something fairly large. And who maybe the astronauts were drugged when they did it. I don't know. I mean, they have
Just
MK
have the
Ultra
same
program.
question.
They have different programs that allow them. I'm not really going to get into
Or hypnotize.
how I
Hypnotism.
think that these people are controlled. I've
Right.
given it a lot of thought, and there's definitely a lot of interesting theories. I think it actually leads into the next couple questions. So,
Okay.
because it says like, why would anybody lie about this? So we'll get into that. So the next one is, what about footage above the clouds? Can't we see a curve? I saw the Red Bull space jump. This is a really funny one because I've had friends tell me, oh, I saw a Red Bull space jump and there was a curve. And that's the funniest thing because it just always blows up in their face and be like, really, how much money do you want to bet you did not see a curve? And so then you show them the same video that they were telling you was proof of the curve flopping around and upside down and like a wet spaghetti noodle, and like then they're like, oh, well, but the earth is still round. Right. So that's a pretty good one.
And we've had Neil deGrasse Tyson flat out say that no, you don't see a curve from that height. At that height, all you would see is flat Earth. The Earth would be flat. So everybody who says that they think they see a curve or they saw a curve obviously doesn't realize what fisheye lenses do.
Well, they're not going off of information, they're going off of emotion.
Right.
And so like that's another thing when you argue these things with people, you have to understand that that's like a very fragile psychological construct that they've built, and they definitely don't want to break it. And I've also noticed that this whole thing, when you're the type of person that believes in lies, it does actually reveal something about your heart. So if you're the type of person that's like, yeah, support the troops, well, what are you really saying by that? And people always say, oh, well, the sheep, they're really, really good people, And like, I get it because, you always try to balance what a person does. They're good and they're bad and all that other stuff. But really, though, when you think about it in your heart, you have to like say when you support the troops, okay, so you're believing then in your heart that it's okay for somebody to go to another person's home and kill them, right? And kill their family, disrupt their children, kill their children. There's collateral damage and stuff. So like when a person says that thing, they do know. It's not like they don't know. They understand that part, and because it's been brought to their attention, and so there's people who are espousing quote unquote conspiracies for God knows how many decades, and people don't even I don't know. I lost my train of thought, but like yeah, I mean it would require you to kind of reject that information, so if you were hearing it as a sheep, you'd be like, oh no, I don't want to hear that. But it's like, but you have heard it, because if you're in your 20s or 30s or even teens, you've heard it already.
Then
You've
you
heard people say
war
it.
is, yeah.
So you would have had to have turned a blind eye to it. So I feel too that actually when people argue, well, what the government is, but actually it's the sheep that comprise of the government. The government counts on the people who listen to the propaganda to enforce it. Who do you think they get to join the police or even the Freemasons or the military or whatever? They get people. And,
right.
I mean, granted, at the higher levels, is there something really weird going on? Like, are people selling their souls, or is there aliens or whatever? I don't know. I mean, I would assume I'd be really careful about pushing forward anything that would be potentially not true, so I would just keep it simple and say like, well, yeah, there could be other things, and that's what we're here in this world to learn. We're to ignore. But at least if you're going to ignore it, don't ignore the obvious. Don't ignore that there is war, and don't ignore that our rights are being trampled on, and do something to fight against it. So or fight or flight. So I mean, we now have a very critical opportunity where people are just thinking how they're going to get food on their plate, let alone whether or not the Earth is flat. So I mean, and that's why Corona is an important thing to talk about. And so yeah, these things are all important. And I think that at the end of the day, as long as people remember, it's like mostly fight or flight. And if you've identified that there's people that aren't telling you the truth, then stop listening to them, and so then that leads into, why would anybody lie about this? Well, first of all, we've shown, I mean, anybody knows that the news lies, right? I mean, if you lined up 100 people and you said, hey, does the news ever lie?
Right.
I'd be like, I don't think anybody would be like, no, never.
I certainly
you
hope
have
not.
to
That's why I
really,
I try in all my presentations to start it that way, because I have to remind people, look at all the areas they lie in. They lie in every single opportunity, and yet for some reason people think when it comes to outer space, things you'll never be able to second-hand verify or to go out there and actually investigate. Somehow people think, well, yeah, they lie to us about everything on Earth, but the things about the sky, the things trillions of miles away, those things they're telling me the truth about. It's like, come on,
Right.
give yourself a break.
Yeah, and so here it mentions that the handful of news medias are thousands of media stations are owned by a handful of people. And that's not unrealistic, right? I mean, if you're powerful and you have a lot of money, and why wouldn't you want to buy up the competition again? Like, you make more money, you have more power, you have more control, and you own it. Like, do you even care at that point if you lose money? Because I don't think you do. Because if
No.
I mean, if you've got 50 billion or 100, or you run a bank,
Right.
or you own a bank, or you own the electronic system for banks, like, you're going to tell me that you wouldn't want to control and buy up all those things? I mean, even if you were a nice guy, you might want more business power. I mean, not saying you would want to monopolize the whole industry, but surely it makes sense that a handful of companies, thousands of companies, would fall into a handful of people to control them. And of course, because they have a vested interest, they think it's for quote unquote national security. They're always talking about it. Oh, for our national security. I think even Neil deGrasse Tyson called flat Earth a threat to national security. So if that's really the case, and if that's how they feel about information, then it's actually the media which would be the first thing they go after. So when it comes to decentralizing things, obviously the first thing you want to look at is decentralizing the media. So obviously people should get off of Google. They should get off of all those mainstream stuff. They should find search engines, even if they have to go to the dark net or peer-to-peer services or whatever. I don't know what people use nowadays for those types of things, if it's BitChute or DTube or something like that. But the people should really strongly start considering putting their content on other services.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, with that said, the why would anybody lie? So when you want to find out a motive for a crime, I mean, first of all, you have to accept that there has been a crime. So if you say, like, a cop killed somebody, right? And they say, oh, well, the cop is a racist. It's like, okay, that's important. The guy is racist, but he's a racist second. He's a murderer first.
Right.
You know what I mean? The guy is still a murderer. They got to be reconciled. So if somebody's lying, first you reconcile the fact that they're actually just simply lying. And then you could say their motives. Well, of course, it could be for money. It could be to hide a god or a creator. It could be for very deep spiritual reasons. It could be for control purposes. They're running a government. They don't want you to question things. They want to have your answer lined up for you. They don't want you to be spiritual. There could be a bunch of things. They could be hiding land. And I list all those things in the FAQ and talk to how it's done. And I do mention, like, at the end of it, like there are what you would call quote unquote exotic theories, like extortion, leveraging prisoners. They could bail out prisoners and draft them into the CIA or whatever, or MK Ultra, or even crazy stuff like cloning or aliens or demons or people selling their souls or whatever. And what I would like to do is set those things aside and acknowledge them as, when people want to try to understand how the system works, it's like they want all the answers to be given to them at once. And I think we have to humbly accept that we just don't really know. At least I don't know. And so I would say that there are ways to accomplish it. So if you want to know, like, oh, well, how could it be possible that large groups of people can lie? Well, first of all, large groups of people can lie anyway, because you could say, oh, can one person lie? Okay, oh, yes, of course. Can two people lie? Well, yes, of course. Can three? And so then you have to ask, when does a drop of water become an ocean?
Right.
Every single time you add one person, one drop of water, when does it become an ocean? And then when does it cross that line to say, you know what, 10 people can keep a lie, but 11 can't.
Right.
Or 15 people can keep a lie, but 20 can't. So it's just like you can't really ambiguously come up with, a limit to how corrupt people can be. So I think there's that. And then, then there's other things. And there's compartmentalization. So you have the military, which is compartmentalized. So before you even get into an exotic theory, like people just selling themselves out or whatever, or just being completely brainwashed, you also have to consider that the military compartmentalizes like 99% of their info. Like everything they do is classified because they started, since all the wartime, they've always said, well, we don't want, our information falling into the wrong hands. We don't want the left hand to know what the right hand is doing. So they always just say, okay, you're on a need to know basis, sir. This is your information. And that's it. So why is it then, if we have a government that's structured in that way, and that is how it's structured, because the most important industries are the intelligence industries, So if you have, whatever industries, your CIA or FBI or whatever, I mean, they're going to keep a lot of their information very close to their chest. And, a Freedom of Information Act is not always going to get you the information that you want.
No, we've learned that.
It's very easy. You're asking the enemy to reveal their hand. You're saying, hey, are you holding aces? No, really. Are you holding a pair of aces? Because if so, I'm going to fold. But if not, I'm going to go all in.
And then they say, give us a month and we'll get back to you. They got to gather their paperwork and everything, of course. Yeah, so it's very easy for them to construct, throw away, get rid of, delete, or produce anything they need to suffice.
People are always like, oh, government, why won't you protect me from government?
Right.
Well, yeah, you're asking them to protect you from themselves. And any type of government structure or system, when do you expect it to be self-regulated? Of course, there's going to be a point where there's going to be people above the law,
Always. Yeah.
And the law, of course, never matches morality. So, what's legal isn't what's moral. I mean, I think people so many people that don't even wrap their minds around how simple that is, and yet how obsessed they are with what their legal rights are. Why would you care what your legal rights are if it's not what's morally correct? You should really have it because a jury can actually dismiss a case if they find that the law that's being used is unjust.
Right.
So, but people never go that route because they never want to actually say, hey, you know what? Actually, I don't even think what I did was wrong.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in because it's not the way people behave. And so we deal with a lot of corruption and all of these things, and the corruption's gotten so big that I think it's very evident with things like Corona stuff. And like I said, if you're a prisoner in your own home, starving yourself to death after quitting your job, and God bless everybody that's in that situation because it's really sad. I'm sorry to hear it. But if you're in that situation and you still believe in the government, I mean, I don't think if you're watching this, just turn it off.
I always say that.
It. You're wasting your time. You're not going to
not the channel
with
for
anything
you.
we say anyway.
No. There's other things for you to watch. I'm sure NASA Live is going on right now. You could listen to. Hey
man, Teletubbies is on. Maybe somewhere. Go watch some reruns or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So so the next one is, what about satellites? So technology for satellites have been around. There's Skywave and LORAN and all the long-range radio and all that other stuff. We have balloons, so for people who say, what could they possibly be? Well, they could be balloons. Or just they could be those long-range radio stuff. So, there's no problem with that. And in my documentary, I do cover that the round Earth they put the satellites so far that they actually have to deal with a latency problem. So then they have to say that light travels through time because of there actually would be such a latency that there'd be a delay between them to communicate, to triangulate you and stuff like that. So it's they have those atomic clocks or whatever. I don't know. Right. And it's just kind of ridiculous the amount of pseudoscience that they need to have work in order for them to even justify their model when we have ground-based technology and we also have things like Skywave, which already work, and just balloons, which would already work, which would be more closer to each other, which would get the result you want, So it's just funny to me that people think that a coordinate system or satellites wouldn't work, but of course they would.
I remember seeing some study done I don't know how many years it was back, but it was ground-based technology would cut the price of, it was somebody did a study and would cut the price of satellite GPS by 1/100th. So it's it would be 1/100th of the price. And it's so funny that they still try and support this whole idea of, we've got all these GPS satellites and they're going around the Earth and they cost us 150 million every time we launch one. When really, when you just do the cost comparison, for 1/100th of that price, you could have the exact same thing like a Loran system, something ground-based. And that's what they
And by
do.
the way, if that's really what it costs them, then they are the most inefficient manufacturers of all time.
Of all time.
Like, seriously, like you have China who pumps out machines for, a few $1,000s that probably that's how much steel is in the machine.
Right.
Like, and they're making a 1% or 5% margin or whatever. And yet the military, who controls these same companies, who probably gets the steel for free, is like saying that they have to put up $1 billion for, a tank or a satellite or a rocket, or it's like, but they've already got, well, I mean, I guess there's the research and development, right? But they've already have the technology for those things. So why would they mix it? You wouldn't want to commingle it, right? You'd want to say, okay, this is our expenditure sheet. And of course, there's a lot of major critique of the defense budgeting, and like $1,000 ladders, $500 hammers and stuff like that. So when you look at that stuff and then you say, okay, so now they're saying that, well, we already know then that they're embezzling, and we already know that it's like a black budget program, of course, because that's just what it's historically known. Yeah. That's not even a conspiracy. That's just a fact, that they don't properly handle their balance sheets are all messed up. So to say that they have this, these satellites that cost like tremendous amounts of money, and it wouldn't make any sense because they don't actually look like they shouldn't be that expensive.
No, I agree.
And I don't think you could find one person in the world who would justify that price. And if so, I would love to see a video on that, because I'm seriously curious about how they justify those prices.
No, I just think they love to keep anything space has to be very expensive, so you don't even think of trying it. Launching a rocket needs to be hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? Otherwise, people like you or I could just start crowdsourcing and thinking, okay, well, because it's so funny, a balloon is a couple $1,000s. But all of a sudden, if you're going to put some fire behind it and some liquid fuel, all of a sudden that jumps into the millions. It's kind of amazing. But again, it tells you why they do that. We did get another super chat from Skeptic936. He said, "Great show, guys. Appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for watching." And again, we may not get through all these because we've got a ton. And if we don't, we'll do it next week. But we'll see how far we go. So just hang with us, and we will end when we end.
Well, I'll keep plugging, so I'm gonna try to say more with less.
Okay, we'll try it.
So the next one is the ISS, and did Sandra Bullock and George Clooney go to space in the movie Gravity? Yeah, I don't think so. They have a multi-billion-dollar budget, so they can easily do it. And my FAQ mentions all the other problems with it, like the major disparities in temperatures, the life-threatening situations that they're in, and they've got these shit-eating grins like they just got paid millions of dollars to do it on their faces. And just like the weird spacewalks, putting things on outside of the ship. I mean, this has been covered to death on your channel. But also interesting is that you actually got a picture of the ISS against the moon. Is that how they always get them? Do they always get them against the moon backdrop, or is there any other way to get them?
Yeah, I've done it both the sun and the moon.
So you need something there in the way, right?
Yeah, otherwise all you'll see at night. I mean, you'll never see it during the day if there's nothing to go back against. And during night, it just looks like a light. So, all you see is a light go by. But as far as, there's a site, it's iss-transit.com, I think, where it'll give you a date and time that you can backdrop it against the sun or moon. And there is something there. It certainly appears. But again, I don't know whether that's holographic. I don't know what it is. I mean, there's so many things.
Well, the thing is that the military has technology, right? And so we have like UFO type sightings. And I think the thing with that is that people know, like with that stuff, our military has some pretty fantastic technology. I mean, amazing stuff. So what they could project, or put or have transit or whatever, and would be, I mean, of course, there's a lot of things they could be doing for that. And they don't need to be doing it, I mean, I don't know. Are these things visible every night? Like, is it every single night that you go out to capture it, like you can get it,
No.
Or is it just sometimes? Like, you's like, oh man, I really tried to get it, but I couldn't see it tonight. So I don't know the consistency of those observations. It'd be
very rare that you could get either a solar or a lunar pass in your area. I mean, if you're willing to drive, you might be able to get a pass within the next 20 days.
See,
But it's not.
that gives them a lot of
Yeah.
wiggle room.
Yeah, it
That's a
does.
lot of wiggle room, because then they don't need to run it like
No,
the
that's what I've
way that
always
we
said,
would think
right.
they'd always have to run it so consistently. They just have to run it where people they know are going to check for it.
Right, and then think
on
about all
those
the places
environments
in
and
all the
then do it.
places in the ocean, and I mean, you wouldn't have to do those. Nobody would see
Yeah,
it.
would be interesting. I'd like to see somebody test there then.
I would
Go
like to
over
see
to
that
the
too.
ocean and then check. Go over a frozen lake or check. But they might still see it, and that's okay, because if you look at it from Earth, they say I know this one, and I don't think it's been reconciled, right? If you say that the ISS is the size of a football field, then how come you can't see a football field from the ISS, but you can see the ISS from Earth?
I've always said
Now,
that.
I've heard people say, but if the football field was lit, it'd be like, yeah, but really, if you zoomed in on it, would you? I don't think so. Because there's things that are lit from Earth,
Yeah, they
that
can't
you
see it.
can't zoom in on from the ISS and see. I doubt that they can see the pyramid at
No, they can't.
the Luxor in Vegas. I don't think I mean, they could see the light, I'm sure, but could they see the structure? Like when you zoom in on the ISS, you see more or less this weird, goofy looking holographic structure.
Right.
So like, it's
No, that's
really
what it comes down
funky-
to. It's so
funky
easy.
looking
You
and-
can even see that light with your iPhone. So there's no way. I mean, it should be very easy
Yeah,
to
there's
see
no
lights
way.
from the ISS of Earth. It should be quite easy. They've got much better cameras than iPhone cameras up there, and it's in a dark background looking at what should be a lit Earth or lit cities. We don't see that.
So there's your debunk. So there's your debunk right there. And actually, so we can see satellites from Earth. Can we see the ISS? Now, I said no. That's probably technically untrue. I said you are probably looking at a weather balloon or a plane, or I didn't mention hologram. Oh, yes, I did. It looks looks like a grainy projection, which wouldn't be hard to fake. So I cover that actually on the next question. Is there 24-hour video of the ISS? And like, woo, shout out to jeranism about your $1,000 bet that it wouldn't show up or wouldn't keep its live feed for more than a half an hour. I'm assuming you never lost that bet.
No, of course not.
And so, so then it would always cut out. The live feed would cut out. And so that's been covered. What about the Coriolis effect? So that one, has been covered. You fire a cannon up, it comes right back down into the muzzle. Snipers don't adjust for it. And then I say something about, let's see, I guess with the rotation of the sun, with the heating and the cooling of things, you would be able to explain, different water currents and air currents and
I
stuff
think
like
so.
that. Because if you really have the sun constantly moving in a certain direction, things south of the sun or north of the sun may behave differently, right? It's actually very common sense. If the sun's
I
going
think so,
around
too.
and then things south of the sun would be spinning like a gear, I guess.
Right.
If you had a gear spinning in one direction, then the gear in one direction of the gear would spin one way, and the gear of the other direction would actually spin the other way.
Yeah.
So that's totally common sense.
It's all a dynamic system that would work just like that, especially if you have
Yeah.
magnetic dielectricity of water. Yeah, there's so many that.
Yeah,
things that
there's
can
no
be-
problem with this on the flat Earth at all.
No.
But there isn't really a Coriolis effect anyway. And you know how they
Right,
scam
that's the
people
problem
too
with
at Ecuador, and it's even been
Yeah, that's
agreed by the
crazy.
mainstream media that it is a scam when you
Right.
go there and they say, "Oh, look, the water goes this way." And then you go over here and it goes the other way if you just walk 100 feet. And, so why are people even scamming? Where did they get the idea to do it?
Right.
I mean, I guess people just want a quick buck, but
I think
really,
I was taught
think
that.
about it. Like,
I think I was taught
that
that in
even-
school. By the way, I think.
well, even the sheep will do it. So
Right.
they'll do it to each other,
Right.
even when it's not, you know what I mean? Even when it's not supported by your own model.
And the other thing, I mean, we
So-
always have to point this out that there isn't a Coriolis force. Now there is on a roundabout, right? You have two people sitting on a roundabout and they're throwing a ball back and forth. Yes, there is a Coriolis effect there because the platform is spinning, and the atmosphere, the air, is not. But on the Earth isn't spinning. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If it were spinning, then flights would take far less time going one direction than they do the other, and it's actually the opposite. Flying to New York is actually faster than flying to California. It should be the complete and total
Yeah, I
opposite.
mean, they try to say that gravity makes everything because there's such a large object spinning, and you think of it like you're sitting on a carousel, and it's like, well, you wouldn't really know if the carousel was really large, but then I still have my doubts too that it seems like, well, yeah, but you're talking about 1,000 miles per hour spin, and then you're
Right.
saying that the whole atmosphere just so casually just travels along without any evidence that it's being spun in a particular
Sorry,
direction.
It's ridiculous.
I find that to be really weird, and
Not to
I
mention that
just think
there's
it's
air.
plausibly deniable. Like all the things
Yeah.
that they always say, right, is plausibly deniable. So it's like, oh, but the Earth spins, but you can't feel it. Oh, and the back of the moon, you can only see the front of the moon, but you can't see the back. And it's just like, oh, and the galaxy's flat, but we don't know. We don't have a model for how it came to that. And it's just like. The three-body problem is an issue with the
Right.
with the orbits, but trust us, the orbits work. And it's just like
They get away with
and so
everything.
they always
It's
do
like-
this like plausible deniability. It's like, oh well, things just happen to be exactly what it is.
Everything is answered by the globe Earth. If you can't see something off in the distance, why not? Because it's blocked by curvature. But if you can see something too far, why is it? Well, it's refraction because of curvature. No matter what, they have it out no matter what it is. If you can see things, if you can't see things, if you see something funky, all of it is attributable to the globe.
Well, I think another one too is that if you say like somebody's lying, right? Well, I mean, my experience with liars who insist on keeping their lie, they'll do whatever they have to do to keep lying. So when
Right.
people think, well, a lie wouldn't be so complicated, but actually, usually they would be, especially when you have the control of the whole world and endless amounts of money and power at stake. I mean, you're not just talking about trivial amounts of money and power. This is the whole kit and caboodle. This is everything.
Everything, yeah.
So this is what they're contending for. So you better bet that they're going to do what they can to protect it. And of course, that's why they're stamping down on everybody's rights. Their right to speak, their right to walk around, their right to just go out in nature. I mean, dude, they're going for the whole thing right now. And so like this is like at the world's darkest hour, the army of light shines brightest. And this is the time where the people have to come out and fight. And if it's speaking or proposing a solution, I strongly recommend anybody listening to go off grid because, why not at least get your stuff settled so where you're not paying bills, you're not owing anything to anybody, you own your house, you generate your own electricity, you get your own water. You get your own food, and it's not that hard. There is a lot of information on the internet on how to do it, and you could still travel when you want to travel, and the money that you would have spent on rent, you could spend on travel. If you really feel like, oh man, I just really like to be in a city. It's like, great. So that $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 you were just going to spend in rent, why don't you spend that every month on going out and having fun, and traveling over the weekend or whatever you want to do. So I think that people need to come up with really physical solutions. Because if we speak about the problem all day, then people are going to be like really upset. They're going to be depressed. They're not going to know what to do. But it's really important also to come in with solutions. Like, what can people do about it? It's like, okay, fine, the Earth is flat. Now what do I do? Huh? Now I'm bummed out. I know everything's a lie. It's like, well, there are things you can do. And in fact, it's liberating because now that you know this, now you know to not waste your time, energy, or anything on things that you can't really prove for yourself, especially by people you see on the television,
Right.
or on the internet. So like, thank God that you have that now, that perspective, that you're protecting yourself better from those types of things that would just eat your time or waste your time.
And
So
$1,200
I'm definitely
rent.
not trying to sell a model for anybody. If anything, I just like them to think for themselves, like you say, and just not give your valuable time and energy to these people on the internet who have a very powerful vested interest, who make millions and millions of dollars at your stake.
Right. And the way I look at it is nobody forced it on me. It wasn't like somebody kept video after video after
exactly.
video trying to push it down my throat. It just took, did I get on it the first time, second time, third time? No. But it was just hearing some rational voices and people talking about it. And I said, I need to look into this myself. So that's all I hope people do. It's the same thing. I'm not trying to force feed anybody the information because you'll never get anywhere with that. You'll never force truth on anybody. Truth needs to be realized. And so there's some people out there that just don't want the truth. So I don't want to affect them. Hey, if you don't want it, live your life, enjoy your slavery.
Yeah. Well,
there's some people out there like that. There's a lot.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, it's easier. They get through their life. They want to focus on being happy. But I feel like that you can do the same thing and still acknowledge that,
Right.
like everything is a rich man's trick. Like why can't they acknowledge that there is slavery going on today and it's and that there is war and there are those things. It just takes 2 seconds to be like, yep, I see it. I know there's war. Yep, I know there's deception.
Right.
Okay, you still want to move on with your life, right? You still want to be a sheep. You still want to follow the rules because you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to take any risks. It's like, fine, then that's how you're going to live your life. It's okay. But at least acknowledge it. Like, at least know that these things are true so that you don't pass down a deception to the next generation. Because your kids and your kids' kids and all these other people and everybody you share information with, if you are sitting there and you're talking about what's going on in the world and then you're just like, oh yeah, we better cover our faces with those masks and we should check everybody's temperature and clean countertops 15 times a day. I mean, fuck, I mean, why would you do that? I mean, so it's not just that people are accepting it. They're going out of their way. They're believing in really deeply abstract, sad, and disgusting things. And they're hurting friends and family. Friends and families are being broken apart. I mean, it's a real mess. And I hope that people wake up and see what's going on and just like, and it's okay to acknowledge it. It's like, they're not even empowering evil. Like, I've always said, like, it's better to highlight things in the world that are good. So I don't want to be counting, the hairs on the devil's butt cheek.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't want to do it. Like, I'd rather be focusing on things that are good. And so I don't want to spend all my time on conspiracies. When I had something to say, I said it. And, today I'm saying it again for your audience, but I'm also putting my spin on it, which is, you don't have to focus all day on the mechanics of a deception.
No.
Because there's more to life than that. There's more than just the mechanics of deceptions.
And once you
there are
acknowledge
always
it,
people out there that'll do it for you. There will always be people out there through, Jaren's network or other people's network who are going to go and they're going to look at these things. And even if they stopped doing their globe busters and all that other stuff tomorrow, there's always going to be people out there that are going to be giving that information as long as the internet stays free. So if there's anything that we're going to want to fight for, is that people start moving away from YouTube and away from Google and away from all these horrible services that are censoring like everything now. And, if we don't even have a platform to speak, they say that you can't be a martyr without the press coverage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So if that's where we are in society, then we really have to think about supporting those other services and getting other people to support those services, because the government's definitely not going to promote those for us. And yeah, so, okay. So the next one, I might start going a little more quicker, Jaren, because I want to get through some of this. Okay. So does the Earth go around the sun? Yeah, no, the system is geocentric. The sun, moon, and the stars go around the north. That's something we know. What about planets? NASA tells us they're real. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've kind of been over that. The planets look really ridiculous, especially if you look over them over the years. Here's a good one. Why can't I see New York from England? Why can't I see the north from the southern hemisphere? Bill Nye, the lying shill guy, was asking that question. And yeah, it's just such a ridiculous question. It's like, it's so funny that you see news articles debunk it. I'm sure you guys have repeated this one many times, but it is pretty ridiculous that people ask that. I don't even know if it needs to be answered. There's atmosphere, smog, fog, dust, dew, buildings, refraction, magnification. Of course, you can't see forever. Why does the sun appear to come in counterclockwise and clockwise in others? And yeah, of course, that's just depending on whether or not you're where you're standing relative to the sun. So, if you're over the equator or under the equator, you're going to be looking at the sun in a geocentric model from a different perspective. So, of course, it's going to do that. It's the same thing if you look at a tire of your car and you look at the tires of your car spinning forward. If you go look at the tire on the driver's side while the driver's moving forward, then that tire is going to be going counterclockwise. And if you go over to the passenger side while the car is moving forward, then that tire is going to be moving clockwise. But really they're just both moving forward. It's just a matter of what your orientation to it. So do stars go around us? And then I say yes, they go around us. Geocentric. What is stellar parallax and why does it matter? So we've talked a little bit about stellar parallax, and I guess this I'll elaborate on a little bit more. But basically, if something's near you or further from you, there should be a visible difference in how they move. So something really close to your face is going to move a lot. Something really far is not going to move much at all. And for things that are light years away, it still doesn't matter, because if you have something that is 4 times further or 10 times further or a million times further, then you're going to have some serious parallax. So, it doesn't stop that from being a thing just because of the distances. Relatively, it's the same, because there's a major difference in the proportion of the distances, which is why I think they say in the first place that the galaxies and the solar systems and all that other stuff are flat. But yet, with all that said, they talk about dark matter and quasars and black holes and a billion zillion years ago, and it's just such a fantastical story that I think they don't have anything for it. And yet they talk about things like the horror of a unique position. And yeah, I know you guys have covered all this. So, yeah, it's just
no,
total
it's good.
nonsense.
I think the great thing is people need to hear another voice that says it. Sometimes it's just the same. It's me saying the same thing all the time. So it's great for people to get to hear somebody else saying the same thing. So it's good. Don't worry.
Yeah, for sure. So the next one is relativity. So Tesla, like I said, was highly skeptical of relativity. He didn't like Einstein's theories. In my documentary, I cover it, and I talk about this math genius, Norman Wildberger, who's really cool on his own right. He's a hyperfinitist, and this actually really helped me in the way that I think. So I'm going to digress in a minute, but like Norman Wildberger has these videos where he talks about, like how he doesn't believe in irrational numbers, but he's a high-level PhD mathematician, and he'll teach everything. He teaches math from the ground up and has like thousands of videos. Really, really, really cool channel for just a kid or for learning, or even for high-level PhD math professionals would be interested in his work. He's the inventor of rational trigonometry, which is like another way of solving for angles and stuff like that, because he's shown that a lot of trig problems, you need a calculator to figure out the sine, cosine, tangent, and stuff like that. And it's like really inaccurate. And if you tried to do it by hand, it would be a lot more work. And he's shown that it's much easier to use like fractions, basically, which he calls spreads. So when you do that, your answers are very concise and perfect. And the point is what I'm getting to. The idea of infinity is kind of ridiculous, because infinity is not a quantity. Right. There is infinity of X. That's not a number. It's not a number. When you it's so retarded that we have this in our math system that
it's so
the
stupid.
Math is based on counting.
Because what if you just say, well, what about +1? What about
yeah,
plus
exactly.
10?
And like counting is, it's all it is. It's you take, sticks, if you're multiplying them, it's actually adding. It's like you add X number of times. So if you do 9 times 9, you've added 9 to 9, that many times, So it's like it's just a counting system. So if how do you have a counting system with the idea of an infinite set or something like that? And I think that this is like a very subtle subversion of the rigorousness of math, which there's always all these morons who throw, oh, it's math, it's science. It's like, okay, but are you doing math that would actually work? Because the thing is like computers don't understand the concept of infinity. You can't run a function an infinite number of times. Your computer breaks down. You can't have a computer, even with floats, like in decimals, like computers have a very hard time resolving them. They have to round them because they're going from base 10 to binary. Right. So they're going to have errors. So things that we think work like in our minds don't work on paper. They don't work when we actually use it with a computer. We have to tell the computer the different rules and stuff like that. And to me, infinity is just a function. It's a function of time. It's like go until you can't go anymore. Pick a number as big as you could possibly pick. Put as many things in this set as you could possibly put. And math is better done with limits. So with that said, what the idea of like infinite universes and multiverses and all this stuff that they're trying to push to really confuse the shit out of people are totally nonsense. They're not based in science. It's not based in math. And math is concrete. Math is rigorous, and it should be based on things which you can calculate and which your computer can calculate. So with that said, the idea of relativity, which goes back to this question, and so relativity was, like the idea of light, and time dilation and traveling through time and all that other stuff. They make like the speed of light a constant, and then they make they make time not a constant, which is stupid. Why don't you just switch it? Why don't you make it so that the speed of light is the one that's not a constant and that time is? So I'd be curious about experiments of light in a vacuum and the speed of light in a vacuum and stuff like that, which we wouldn't be able to do here on Earth. So then again, we're defaulting to believing in NASA. And relativity has been used to dismiss a lot of experiments that would otherwise validate the flat Earth. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. And then they make Einstein like this really important big guy, and he hasn't really invented anything. They don't talk about Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi, and I'm not going to get into if people think like that they weren't as, be like, oh, well, Gandhi really wasn't what you think. And
Right.
yeah. I know, I get it. But the idea of a guy who wins a war by passively resisting, which is something we should be doing today. If Gandhi could just resurrect from the grave and like get people to break these stupid laws for like Corona, like the world would be a much happier and better place.
Right.
Like because Gandhi told them to resist no matter what. Like it's like, you know what, just resist. Doesn't matter if they beat me, they beat me. If they throw me in jail, they throw me in jail. But I'm not going to follow these unjust laws. Like what a wonderful example. And I think
it's okay
that
because I agree. A lot of people, whenever you try and pull somebody from history, they'll say, "Oh, but that person didn't exist. He's not who we thought he was." Yeah, but we can use him as an example. We can pretend for a second that he existed and then make comments on him. It's fine.
Yeah, and you know what, and you never know with hearsay and gossip. There's always one thing one person says about somebody or another, but for the most part, and when a person's life is never complete until all the details are filled in. So was somebody a saint their whole life?
Right.
Very few people probably are able to live that example, and I don't think I've lived that example, and I only know I try to live that example moving forward, so that I keep my heart pure from today forward, and that's my goal. I can't expunge the evil in the hearts of others, but I can certainly expunge the evil in my own heart, and I can work on my own heart, and because I can't force somebody to do that. I mean, if even like this goes into very deep spiritual things, like we can't, as much as we would love to save certain people, like they're given free will, we respect that, and so we know that even God, well, I know some people may or may not believe in God or a creator. And when I talk about God, I'm not talking about like a biblical God. I'm just talking about the concept of a creator, or of a consciousness or whatever. I just feel like you can't have a creation without a creator.
Right.
I know that sounds crazy, but
nope,
it's like
sounds
there's a creation
pretty
here.
logical
well,
to
I
me.
think there was a creator. It's like you're nuts.
How dare you?
Yeah.
I don't see the logic in it.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Right.
But yeah, so I don't know, and I mean, of course, I've thought about different ways of how it could work. Like some religions think God plays hide and seek. Some people think, that there's the traditional idea of a soul. I like that idea because I can only see things through my eyes. I can't see things through your eyes, and I couldn't just be a big bunch of chemicals. Because then the chemicals are connected to the floor, and the floor is just chemicals, and the computer's just chemicals. So why is my perspective here? They'll be like, oh, well, your brain and your eyes. Okay, why my brain?
Right.
Why not? If his brain's just chemicals, why not the computer? Computer just chemicals, right? Why can't I see it from the computer's perspective? Why can't I see it from yours? So we have this like unique, I guess you could say, the horror of a unique position.
Right.
I have the horror
Wonder
of a
why.
unique position. I have to reconcile it. I'm me.
Right.
So that's the first thing I reconcile. So I know that I have some sort of a soul or something. I just don't know how anybody could go through the world and not be spiritual to some extent. So it's just weird, and
Yeah, unless
maybe they're right.
they're
Maybe they don't
taught-
have souls. Maybe we're missing the point.
Right,
Maybe
they're all
gave it up. They
NPCs,
don't have
and we missed that fact. Could be,
Yeah.
because it's hard for us to see it. I can't see it. I went there for a little while in my own life and just realized how ridiculous it was, and just said, no, I've got to recognize. You got to be truthful to what's around you. That this is created. There's so many signs of the Creator everywhere, and if it's basically just putting your hands over your eyes and saying no, 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 that's the only way to look away from that. But that is exactly what science teaches you, is that to not pay attention to your senses and to close your eyes and to trust other men and not your own senses. That's how they get away with what they do.
Well, I was thinking maybe that's why they do some of the things they do. Like maybe that's why we get vaccinated, and like maybe on some people, like one of the side effects is it damages that link, because they say like it hurts like the pineal gland or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I haven't
I wouldn't
really
put it
gone
past
too
them,
deep
right?
into it, but I know that like if there is like a link in your body which like somehow links to your spirit, like maybe there's something that they screw with, and like it messes with you. I don't know. I'm really going out on a limb and just guessing.
We've talked
I don't
about
know,
it.
because I can't see it from other people's eyes. I only see my own perspective, so I only am going to testify for myself. They also say you can't really testify for yourself, but yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just saying this is how I feel about it, and yeah.
People can
So
take it or
okay,
leave it.
so next one. What about gravity? So yeah, you guys have, of course, I know a lot of flat earthers like to cover, buoyancy, density, pressure, and stuff. But I really like the electrostatic theory of gravity. I mean, it's something we can measure in a lab.
Mm-hmm.
I can run a lab experiment. I can rub a balloon in my hair. I can see their static electricity. And interestingly, there are, maybe I might even have this for you. There is a link here with the, I will. How do I send you a thing? Hold on.
Just put it in the Skype chat.
No, that's not it. Hold on. Jaren, where's the messages?
Might have closed. It might be the.
I see. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you the link so you can show this to people. I think. Hold on. Let me just double check. This is the link that I'm thinking about. Yeah, so this is a link that shows all the different math that they would work for gravity, and then it's showing how it can be replaced with electrostatics. I when I was looking up this stuff and I was really trying to understand this better, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like, this guy's done all this work, and I haven't verified it or checked it, so you guys are probably going to want to verify it and check it yourselves. But it's interesting, and so the point being is that there shouldn't just be one way to explain a scientific phenomenon. They're just saying gravity. It's very dismissal because they don't have that on a micro scale. They don't have it in a lab experiment. So they're really just saying gravity based on their heliocentric model.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, and that's assuming that you can get to space and measure those things and see them for real, or else then it's just totally a guess. And I think with electrostatics, it's awesome, and they have the math to back it up. So I really like that, and this is something that I didn't have in the FAQ, so it's some fresh material.
It's
so
nice.
yeah,
Great.
so you might want to show the link to your viewers. If flat earthers dismiss evidence of NASA photos, who's to say you can't dismiss their flat Earth videos? You can.
Go right ahead. Enjoy yourself.
And people do. But do it yourself. Go to the beach, see how far you can see, run your own experiments. That's our point. You know what I mean? Do your own experiments. Somebody just recently said, I know how far the moon is. It was like, how do you know how far the moon is? He's like, oh, well, and like it took me forever to get this out of him to actually say it. And then he's just like, oh, well, you just hold a quarter up to your face and then you know how far the moon is. I was like, what? He's like, oh, well, the diameter, you know the diameter of the moon and you know the diameter of the quarter. So you know the distance. I was like, oh my God.
Those are my favorite.
Do you think that's proof? And then it's just like, well, how do you know the diameter? And then I was just waiting for him to say, oh, well, you know the distance. So you see, if you know the distance of the quarter and you know the distance of the moon, you know the diameter. It's like totally circular. So yeah, it's just funny. So people should run their own experiments, but they should also be very critical of their own material. And I feel like flat earthers are, because we're constantly catching ourselves. We're like, oh man, I made a mistake there, and I'll get over that. I made a couple mistakes in my documentary, and I'd like to mention them. I'd actually also mention that in my documentary, where I said, if I make mistakes, I want you guys to point them out. But at the end of the video, I said, follow the logical fallacies. So no ad hominem, no ad populum, no, all the different things that you could say that would be like, oh, well, because so many people say this, it's true. Nope, that's not scientifically valid. Like, if I want to debunk, I want a nice, clear, concise reason as to why I've made a mistake, and that's great, and we can go from there.
Right.
And not just your emotional opinions or stuff like that. Like, I want a real reason. So yeah, next one is, how about the horizon? Can't I see a curve from the plane? Yeah, we know you can't. There's curved mirrors, curved things, the Russian MiGs and stuff like that. Superior mirages, what about them? That was covered really well in my documentary. It's really one of my favorite subjects, like all different kinds of mirages and things that we can see. Some people argue that mirages on the round Earth would be inverted. And yeah, that's pretty interesting. I don't know. I know there's different types of mirages when there's different types of things going on in the atmosphere, inferior or superior. So that's definitely a whole can of worms there. What are crepuscular rays? And this is one that's kind of interesting. If you trace them back, they make it look like the sun is somewhat local. And I don't know if that's because there's just certain hot spots or if something expands. And maybe somebody who believes in the heliocentric model will say they do not. They work on both models. I don't know. Do you know if crepuscular rays favor one model or the other, or if they're just
well, I think that they can always go back to perspective. It's just a perspective thing. It's the same thing they'll say is the same thing as railroad tracks. the way that the lines work, that if you have a source light and the rays would always come out like that, no matter how far away the source light is. I mean, that's what they'd say.
And it works on the heliocentric model as well.
Again, I don't think so. No, but I've heard them say that. I've heard them argue that. But I don't.
Well,
I don't
another
think
one
that.
is when they say like the anti-crepuscular rays, and I had a friend asking me about that. He's like, "See, proof," and so it's good that I actually got reminded of this because like yeah. So I said, okay, well let's go with what you're sending me. So they have the ones where the rays splay upwards,
Correct,
instead of like down,
right?
And that's basically the same as standing under a bridge.
Right.
Like if you're standing under a bridge or under a ceiling, you're going to see as a pattern on the ceiling as it gets closer to you expands and splays upward. And the same way we say when you see something going towards the horizon, it gets smaller. Yes, and when you see something coming away from the horizon, it expands.
Right. P-Brain's done the best. P-Brain, and everybody knows who watches the show, P-Brain's done some incredible videos on the anti-crepuscular rays for sure.
Yeah, and I mentioned him in my documentary as well,
Yeah.
and he asked for a credit, and I gave it to him. So it says if the sun is 92 million miles away, I thought Eratosthenes proved that. Yeah, we covered him when we covered Stick and Shadow. Did he even exist?
That's another question. I've often mentioned that, and yeah, there's people that came out of the same city, Alexandria, that were the librarian, just like he was 100 years later, that studied the exact same subjects, that wrote book after book after book, yet never mentioned him. So how does that happen? But and like I've tried to compare it to, it'd be like somebody coming out of North Carolina, going and playing for the Bulls, writing a biography of their life, and just never mentioning Michael Jordan. It's just not going to happen.
Well, and also you're talking about thousands of years, so forget it. I mean, who knows?
Who knows?
Could be a fairy tale story, whatever.
I don't put it. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, probably.
So it's like, so did we land on the moon? Yeah, we've been over it, but there's some interesting notes here in my FAQ, which are kind of cool. One of them is the Astronauts Gone Wild one, where Bert Siebel, I think, is like an ambush journalist and like catches all the astronauts off guard. And one of them, their son threatens to kill him. He's like, "Hey, should we have the CIA go and whack him?" Like right on camera. Like if that's the caliber of people that you want to trust. I mean, yeah, we've all said stupid shit in our life before, but this is just, I mean, they're all like this, like Buzz Aldrin punches him, threatens to sue him. I mean, says, okay, fine. If it's fake, then go talk to the director of NASA. And, so I mean, they're really weird.
We're just passengers. We're just passengers.
Yeah, we're just passengers. And, they say all these things. And, one says they saw stars. Other says they didn't see stars. There's all that stuff. Something else I mentioned was Mythbusters trying to move their hands in a vacuum. You seen that one?
Right, yeah, of course.
So inside Adam Savage's cave space glove vacuum chamber. That's a great one. So he can barely even move his hands. Like, wow, this is tough. It's like that should be the hint right there that like maybe they're not doing what you think they're doing.
Yet these guys are taking pictures and doing experiments and playing golf, and it's all real fun. Real funny. Yeah.
So next one is what is the moon? And I just put nobody knows. And this is okay. So this is actually something I do want to expand on. So now you have the thing for the link that I sent you about Tribal 3D. If you want to play that for your viewers.
Sure. The
holographic printing and lenticular printing.
Oh, hold on a second. I think I did have it somewhere. Got it. Okay, I'll have the volume off and it'll be playing. So go ahead and talk.
Okay. So they're seeing it, but there's no volume.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is basically a lenticular holographic print. It is 360 degrees of parallax, meaning you can see it from any angle, above, below, side, and these can be animated. They can change image entirely. They can, bleed in from one image to another. And this is what we can do with holography. So imagine what a creator could do with the sky. People who are so quick to dismiss the flat Earth first have to ask themselves, if it's a design system, then you're saying all these things can't happen? No, of course they can happen because there is holographic technology and we have it, and I'm not saying that the sky is that way, but I'm just saying like, if we can make this, then imagine what a creator could make. They make the sky, they can make double convex lenses or whatever, or they can do, in fact, you could do it where each cell is like a dome, and like each pixel is a dome, and then there's different color gradients that will lead into a different one. This is a method of holography, so that you can see a different color from 360 degrees of angle, And obviously, to do the sky, you wouldn't need it to be that complicated, even. So, because there's easier ways to accomplish the same thing with just different refraction techniques. So this is important. And the reason why it's important is because, as I mentioned in my documentary, and I want to expand on it even more, is that we see the sun and the moon always showing the same face. And I think flat earthers don't talk about this enough, that when you are further from the moon, it tilts towards you. It has to tilt towards you. So this is evidence to me that if the Earth is flat, then the sky must have some sort of holographic property, something. Now, I argue in my documentary that it could be atmospheric, that the atmosphere is designed in a certain way that could cause things to tilt towards you, which is why I say they tilt and then they go up and down or stuff like that. And I know that I kind of got quite complicated in the different layers of the atmosphere and talking about what they could or couldn't be. But the reason why I was talking about that in the first place was really actually to reconcile this problem, because the moon, if you're, south of it, or if you're right below it, should be at a different angle, right? And it should be tilted. So how is it that the moon is always facing you? I understand if it's a light up in the sky, it doesn't have to tilt much, like if you put a picture of a moon on your ceiling and then you move the respective amount of distance away from it. But if it's magnifying, right, and going more closer towards you on the horizon, and you're at a sharp angle, and yet you're still seeing its face, you have to ask yourself, how is that even possible? So for that to be possible, there needs to be something in the atmosphere which would be like a gradient, which would tilt it towards you. So then that way that when it magnifies and gets cut off on the horizon, that it's still facing you. And another thing would be that if it's not doing it atmospherically, it could be doing it because it's behind a type of, double convex type lens, or some sort of holographic type thing. And I hate to say it, but it's just something that needs to be talked about more, and it's not talked about,
Right.
But they should talk about it. This is an important problem. And I felt like, when I was bringing new information to the flat Earth community, I wanted to make sure that I covered important problems. So I don't know if you want to expand on that.
No, I think it's great. I think that most people, when they get into the holographic idea, they become a little bit shy of talking about it. But I think it's important to discuss, because it's not impossible. It is possible. And we just need to be open to any kind of answer. You don't have to be, it has to be a rock in space. Oh, it has to be a reflection of the sun. Oh, it has to be its own light. We don't know what it has to be. And so really just having an open mind on these things is a lot better. I don't think it's a 2,000 mile diameter rock floating above our heads. So from there, I'm able to kind of go any direction I want,
Well, I think that there's strong evidence, extremely strong evidence of holographic or design properties. I think one of the reasons why flat Earth is hidden to begin with is because those issues of the sun and the moon and the eclipses are so perfect,
right,
that on a flat Earth they really do just force you to accept intelligent design.
Right.
There's just no other way to see it. And the round Earth model, although
craziness.
Really people should ask themselves, because the round Earth model, one of my favorite debunks to the round Earth model is actually just eclipses.
Yeah,
I'm
400 times the size and 400 times as far. The statistical improbability there is astronomical.
It's literally by no stretch of the imagination,
right,
using that word. What are the odds? The odds are the same as me winning the lottery 1 billion times in a row. Seriously, there is no chance that a flying space junk rock is going to hit the planet that we inhabit, break off, form this perfectly thing, and then it's not even the same materials of Earth. It's this other weird stuff, allegedly. Right. And then it just so happens to be the perfect diameter, and it always shows its face. It never shows its backside. That's supposed to be natural? Come on, man. Show me that in a computer model. If you're a scientist, I want to see it. I want to see your computer model of that happening with Newtonian physics.
Never.
I don't want it to be random. I want you to show me the randomness type event that caused this thing to actually happen and then perpetually orbit around the Earth like a perpetual motion machine, without any degradation. no differences in the orbits year by year. You know, they say, oh, it is moving away by like an inch. Oh, there you go with their plausible deniability garbage again. So like, you know, so they're saying that this is their system. Fine, if that's your system, then tell me, what are the odds of that? How are you going to pass off your system as not intelligent design or no creation or no type of anything like that, and still tell me that the moon and the sun can eclipse each other? I mean, they're going to say it's by coincidence. Well, I mean, they get away with it somehow, but on a flat Earth, they wouldn't be able to get away with it, in my opinion, because there's too many things that show, like, you know, even like you'll say like the southern stars. That's covered later, but I may as well just mention it now because we're talking about holograms. Okay. You know, there's a couple things, like the first one being magnetic drift. We don't know where our compass is truly pointing because they tell us to take it off course. They say, oh no, you're not really pointing south. South is that way. So then you could say that the southern celestial pole is actually at a very specific location, and then they're just telling you to drift your compass towards it so that you're always going to face it whenever you're going south, because you're not actually going south.
And I've shown there's places in the south, in Antarctica, that are magnetic declination of -179, which means if your compass is telling you you're looking north, you're actually looking south. It's just ridiculous that would even be the case. Yeah, tons of it. Yeah, -177. -165, they're all over. So they've got people so backwards that they have no idea. But again, you need
so you don't even know what you're looking. You have no idea what you're looking at then.
None whatsoever. Yeah. And it's very easy to confuse people. Again, it's the whole idea we talked about. That's what would happen if you had a bunch of people living on a table and you tried to convince them that they lived on a sphere. There'd be places on that table that you would be looking one direction. Well, they need a way to tell you, sorry, you're actually looking the other direction. Magnetic declination takes care of that. We got two other super chats real quick. Tona V said, speak on the new spacecraft launch, please. You used to do amazing videos about FakeX. Yeah, we'll probably talk about that tomorrow, obviously. And we did a live video on Rose 777's channel. We did a live watch party of the latest FakeX fakery, and it was just nonsense. I mean, we don't even need to go watch it. It's terrible. Nothing new, nothing exciting, no new angles. It's the same old crap that they've been giving you since the 70s. I don't know how anybody believes it. And then he says, are you going to make a video about the latest SpaceX launch? I remember you used to do amazing videos on the hypocrisy. Yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah, you know, I don't know what else there is to point out. We saw it go up. We see him flip the camera to a different view. Of course, I've seen a lot of news reports coming out saying flat earthers are embarrassed by the shape of the earth when they see the new SpaceX launch. It's like that's they always got to say that. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Oh, we're so embarrassed.
Oh, I'm so embarrassed. It's like what flat earther is embarrassed today because SpaceX is launched? Absolutely zero. But this is what the media does nowadays.
-0.
Yeah. So, of course. So what do you expect from the media? To just say whatever they can to kind of convince anybody who's out there who's on the fence and like, oh man, I almost was a flat earther, but now they've been embarrassed by SpaceX.
Actually, the funny thing is about people being on the fence. I have a friend who called me during the SpaceX launch, and he's like, hey, yeah, man, he's like, you're right. I saw the SpaceX launch, and you know, the Earth is flat, man. I think I agree with you. It looks so phony, and there's all these problems, and I saw this one problem here, and I just really wanted to tell you about it, and this is another thing. So this is like somebody who is on the he's not really on the fence. I mean, he kind of like I went into great depth telling my friend about it, and like he's pretty much on terms with it, but like, you know, it's just more preponderance of evidence against what they're doing, and this is just their own personal experiences. So like nobody was pulling his leg, you know, to make him disbelieve it. So I mean, seeing is believing, and when you see the stuff that they supply us and just how much junk it is, and how easy it would be to chill it. I mean, why do they have to publish articles like that? Like, what if the Earth is really round? Just be happy with your knowledge that is the case, and why would you ever have to fight flat earthers on it in the first place?
It's like if anybody was embarrassed, it was them until like SpaceX launched, and they're like, oh, thank God. Okay, I was almost embarrassed by the flat Earth stuff coming out, but it's like, no, see, it is round. I mean, they just love it. And it's crap
but of course, then they have to deplatform flat earthers so that we don't even get a chance to respond. Absolutely. Because, you know, that would be too dangerous.
It's harmful misinformation.
Yeah, harmful disinformation.
We're going against the WHO. How dare us? So no, it's so, good. And, anybody who's ever watched Eru does a great job of at least showing people that it's so easy to fake. He can do it in minutes on his 3D software. And really, it's just a rocket nozzle that either is CGI, I mean, you couldn't tell, or whether it's just a rocket in a warehouse with a green screen, and you plug that in front of this rotating ball, and the whole world thinks the Earth's curved. So it's really the easiest fake of all time, and you have to realize how much money these guys are getting, whether it's NASA or SpaceX, who basically lives off government subsidies and just cleans plates with it.
Another one is why is it then that NASA is supposedly getting $1 bazillion every year, but now they're private companies who have less money, less power, and less connections that are all of a sudden magically getting these contracts?
Right.
Like, what happened? What happened to the money that we were giving to NASA then? What about that? Are they just not going to do space stuff anymore, and they're going to let third-party companies do it? And obviously the reason is because they're just trying to make people think that space has gone to private organizations and it's not really a government thing. It's,
right. That's
there's all
exact
these
reason.
private organizations now that are doing it. It's like, yeah, right. And then I'm pretty sure you covered like how much work that they do to like go through all the clearances, get the, I think I've heard once that an astronaut requires the highest security clearance in the world. So like,
right.
or one of the highest. So like, I mean, the things that the hoops that they have to go through, and then to say that NASA's
Elon,
not doing it themselves, like why isn't NASA going to Mars then?
Right. Like, or going back to the moon. Yeah, it's just like Elon said before. To get government clearance, they had to give 300 government officials full backroom access, full computer access to all their systems. I mean, do you think that's no longer a private company in my book? If you've had to give 300 government employees access to your computer systems, they can make those computers say whatever they want. And again, when you're basically living off of a simulation, you can create anything you want. And people who sit at those little kiosks would never know the difference. We've seen,
and really, he's like such an insult to Tesla's name. I mean, Nikola Tesla would be rolling around in his grave if he knew that somebody was misusing his name for this
not
company.
even that.
I mean,
I've got him in an interview saying that he prefers Edison to Tesla.
Oh God!
I mean, that's where I was like, oh my goodness.
Even worse. So then it's like, what is he just doing it just because out of spite? He like calls it Tesla because, it's just like Tesla wanted free energy, and like not these super expensive batteries. But first of all, the best batteries you can do, in my opinion, for solar is nickel iron, because nickel iron is it lasts like pretty much a lifetime. All you have to do is change the electrolyte levels, and unlike lithium, which will only last a certain amount of years, and then you have to replace them all over again. So I just think that these people are just total shills. Now, actually funny, because nickel iron was called the Edison iron battery, so it's actually like an Edison thing. But,
right.
I mean, Nikola Tesla wanted to send, frequencies all over the place, and he wanted to give people free energy, and he, worked on the radio and all that other stuff. I mean, and just to think that somebody so important is not being properly honored or acknowledged by that company.
His name was never even mentioned, Tesla's name in any of my education. So I mean,
right.
It just shows you that they're trying to hide him. And yeah, the whole idea of the Tesla car is just a joke when you're talking $50,000 cost to create something, and then you're selling it for $35,000 and existing off government subsidies to make up the profit. It's just ridiculous. That's not how you run a business. You can't create products for $50,000 and sell them for $30,000 and be like, yeah, I'm doing a good business. No, you're not. You're doing the opposite. Should be, and then they're worth more than GM. Give me a break. Stupid.
Yeah.
Where are we at? I forgot. I got lost.
We were at. So what about orbits?
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah. So then that one, I'd want to talk about the 3-body problem. So that what about them?
Right.
Have they solved them? Like they can't even reconcile like the sun, the sun, moon, and the earth.
Nope. They can just look up and say, where is it? And say, okay, it's supposed to be there. There it is. That's all they can do.
But yeah, so they estimate the moon to be the size of a planet. So it's like a planet-planet relationship. And actually, so this is what got me into flat Earth in the first place. So my whole life, I had questions about like I was really didn't like it's like of course I grew up with space stuff, and I like Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball actually. And I'm not a big fan of. But I mean, there's, we see Star Wars and all that other stuff. So it's like cool. It's cool stuff. And but then like for watching movies, we suspend disbelief. So it's not like we apply that to like, okay, this is the world we live in. We watch movies about all kinds of things, that we know aren't true. So, to think that, I wasn't like emotionally attached to it. And then as I got older, I was like, wait, but how does the moon not crash into the earth? I was like, that's weird. I was like, isn't it like two magnets like pulling on each other? Like the earth and moon are like pulling on each other. So how is it that they could be doing that and then not colliding? Is just blows my mind. How could the moon lift like trillions of or I don't know how many millions of tons of water over the ocean, and then not pull closer towards us.
Right.
So the idea that it's just keeping this perfectly, consistent orbit is just nuts. And so when I went and I looked for an open source model for this, it's like, well, there has to be something that somebody coded that shows like that this is a thing. And I couldn't find anything. And I was like, well, this is weird. And the stuff that I found like always cheated it a little bit. They'd cheat the orbit, or they'd do stuff like, I was like, wait, what? Why are they doing this? Like, why don't they just do it based on the standard gravity math that they're supposed to have? And I wasn't able to find some. If somebody knows of something that reconciles the three body problem, like, let me know, because I wasn't able to find anything.
Yeah.
So the fact that they talk about science and math, they don't even have math for their own sun, moon, and Earth orbit. But I don't know. Am I wrong about this? I thought the three body problem hasn't been
still hasn't been solved. No, you're right.
Yeah. So there's that, and there's a lot more in the FAQ. You guys are probably going to want to read it on your own time. But is there proof that the sun goes around us? I say yeah. So I say you can see the sun set from airplanes at high altitudes. So they say you can see the sun's diameter shrink, like I guess over the desert or when there's a change in atmosphere.
Right.
But I don't know about that. I mean, I know that they say with solar filters. I've seen some people look at them with solar filters and they see them shrink, and then other people, don't. So I don't know. I think the biggest one is the lack of 24-hour sun in the Arctic summer. So this is like a big deal to me. Like, they have never given us any 24-hour sun above the horizon. Not light. I don't care if it's light 24 hours. I care if I can see the sun. Right. Can I see the sun,
and all those
for 24 hours over the south?
All those seem to be so faked. And as far as the sun getting smaller, P-Brain does a great video where if you remove, if you basically put two tennis balls on the ground and then you put the camera real close to one and you move a tennis ball away, yeah, it gets smaller. But actually, if you remove that tennis ball from your perspective, so say you put it on the ceiling way high above you and then move it across, it doesn't get as small as fast. So it could just be that the sun is so far away from us, removed from our perspective already, that when it heads off into the distance, it doesn't get much smaller. And it does get a little bit smaller. We've seen that. But I mean significantly, like 50% or something like that. Again, it's because it's already been removed from how close it is to us by a large amount. You also asked, is there proof that is there proof that the sun goes around us? I think, one of the best things to just talk to people about is when you're looking at a sunset, clearly you're not falling backwards at, way faster than the speed of sound. It's just not what you're seeing. You're seeing the sun go away from us. But go ahead.
Oh, another one too is that, like, if you lay on your back and then you stand up and then you can see the sun set again. Yeah, same's true for magnification. So if you take a magnifying sheet and you look at something set and then you just change your angle just in the slightest, you're going to see more of it. Yeah. So, and even in the slightest amount. So if you're magnifying something, it's because you're looking through a different frame of focus. So those aren't debunks of anything, not debunk of flat Earth for sure. Yeah. And yeah, atmospheric lensing, magnification, refraction, whatever you want to call it. I mean, basically just something that we could prove at home with an experiment, and we can show, like, if you simulate the atmosphere and then you change your viewing angle and you ascend a little bit, you're going to see a little bit more of it. So yeah, that's totally natural.
If you're in a big old wide field and you are 6 feet tall, you can see farther than your 3-year-old child that's only 2.5 feet tall. Just the way, right. Just the way it works.
Common sense, yeah. And it's a different focal area. Like, it's like if I take something and I focus on it, then I change my focal point. Well, yeah, I'm going to see different things. It's like a different focal point. Right. So it's just basic optics. There's no problem there. What are stars? What are planets? I think there's a good answer right here. Nobody knows.
Right.
So,
Somebody's trying to tell you
what
they
do we
know.
know? I mean, ancients used to call them wandering stars. When we zoom on them, they don't look like the things that NASA's saying they are. They're all different looking. They all have different patterns. Why is that? And I understand that people see, like, the planets and they say, oh, but I can see these little dots. They look like moons around Jupiter. I don't know if you've ever looked for those or observed those. I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah, I have.
And if it's a thing, then that's okay. So then that's a thing you see in the sky. Mm-hmm. So what? What's the big deal? And then explain then why why is the light so bright then? Like, are they saying that that's reflected light? So if they're saying, like, Venus is the brightest thing in the sky, they're saying that the brightest thing in the sky is that way because it's reflected from the sun? That's hard to believe, that the atmosphere is reflecting that powerful of a light. And I don't know if there's any issue with the inverse square law of light or however they
Oh,
want to
there
call
is
it.
tons. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. To me, it just looks like a light. I'm not going to be so arrogant as to say that I know what these things are, you know? So if I look at it and I look at the sky, I'd rather keep my childlike amazement and bewilderment than to sit there and claim and tell other people that I know exactly what these things are.
Well
But they're
said.
the lights, they're the heavens, and that's just how people have always seen them.
Well said.
What about the aurora? Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned here. I talk about some of the magnetic field that can cause it. Ionized air, oxygen can be yellow, green, or even red, and nitrogen can appear blue. I guess that's what I said. I don't know if that's true or not. Is I think it is.
No, it's good.
I
Yeah.
put it there. I try not to. Yeah, I try not to make. So I try to keep it simple.
Try not to make shit
So
up.
when they mix, they can form other colors. Some claims exist of fabled southern lights. There's some debates about that. There's probably some southern lights. Sure. Why wouldn't there be magnetic activity in other parts of the world? That's okay. No problem with that. I mean, even using their same magnetic drift thing, that if there is that, then there could be effects of very powerful magnetic drift and some southern light phenomenon, right?
I agree.
No problem there. What about the tides? Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that the sun heats and cools the water, but I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it could
how
be
much
that.
you guys have talked about it. There's the cosmic breath thing, or the sun just going around and heating and cooling water, and obviously you're talking about doing this to millions of tons of water. So why wouldn't there be very, 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 very slight variations in the tides? I mean, when you're talking about the tides, you're talking about this massive, massive body of water, thousands of miles of water. And you're talking about the difference of a few feet, in the tide. So what? Why is that a
especially the
big
fact
deal?
that the salt water seems to be where the tides are, and the fresh water, there are no tides. So that tells me that it could be something with the magnetics of the sun and moon and the salt water, which seems to, many people have showed you could put salt water, put a little paper boat in there and move it around with a magnet. So it'd be very easy to create tides.
Oh, that's really cool. There'd be something nice to add to this. I didn't know about that. That's neat. But yeah, I mean, so there's obviously other I think the thing is that the real scientists are actually investigating what the cause would be. They're not just sitting there saying, "Oh, it's the moon." End of discussion, and then move on.
Right.
Yeah. So real scientists go and they do experiments, and then they try to come up with ways that they can explain something. And when they have a result from their experiment, they just don't sit there and say, "Well, this is it. That's the end." Oh, nice. Cool. All right. So, the next question. Let's see. Foucault's pendulum. Yeah. So they don't. My big thing is, do Foucault's pendulums work on a small scale? Like a really teeny tiny Foucault's pendulum, or do they have to be massive?
I don't think so. Yeah, they have to be massive, supposedly. But they also all have to have electromagnetic, components. It's not just hang this ball from a ceiling and it will. It should be. It should be just hang a ball.
It was the ball and socket joint.
Yeah, it is. And there's also they have to have some sort of electromagnetic component that pushes the ball along, because otherwise it will just stop, which is hilarious, because really you should just be able to hang a heavy ball from a string and then it starts swinging if the earth is spinning.
And also there's magnetic north, and there's all these electrostatic and electromagnetic forces, and so what? So what does that prove? And if there was Coriolis, and if there was, this pendulum thing, but we know that in the geocentric system, the sun and the moon and the stars are revolving around the North Pole anyway.
And it's got the
in that
same
model,
effect.
why is it so unrealistic that there's a massive electrostatic field or electromagnetic field? First of all, you get in a lightning storm, the lightning come from the ground up, from the sky down. You know that there's a massive amount of electric and static energy. And in fact, you can even pull energy from the sky. If you take a cable and you run it all the way down to the ground, you're going to get energy. You know that, right? But of course, it's a really, really expensive way to generate energy. But if you run up the cable high enough, you're going to get even more. And so the amount of electrostatic energy that it generates is insane. It's a tremendous amount. And plus, when you compound that with pressure, because now you're creating pressure, right? And when you pressurize something and then you compound it, you're going to have even more.
Right.
So,
and it's already been shown that it's equal. I mean, there's been tests and experiments that have shown it. Even Ernst Mach, who worked with Einstein, said, obviously it doesn't matter if we think the Earth is turning around its axis or at rest while the fixed stars revolve around it. Geometrically, these are the exact same. The case of a relative rotation of Earth and the fixed stars with respect to one another. But if we think of the Earth at rest and the fixed stars moving or revolving around it, there is no flattening of Earth, no Foucault's experiment, so on. It's identical. So, again, if you have the Foucault experiment and you're trying to say that proves that the Earth spins, it's just not true. It would be the same thing if the stars were spinning and the Earth was stationary.
So the next one is the majority of the scientists say the Earth is round. They can't be lying. This is a good one because it says, like, okay, so if you graduate from Harvard, what is it that you just did? Well, you went to school, you got pretty much great grades. So if you got good grades, did you question the material? Well, how could you have questioned it if you had to memorize it, right? And I mean, this is not taking a jab at anybody who's got good grades. If you did, good for you. But I mean, the point is you had to memorize that material. So my question out to people who've memorized the material is, did you really seriously question the material? Because if you disagreed with the material, would you have wanted to go to school?
Or would you have
wanted to go get the PhD? Would you have wanted to graduate in something that you didn't agree with the material?
Right.
So with that said, when you talk about mainstream scientists, first of all, you have to agree with the fact, or at least acknowledge that they had to get these diplomas, and then how could they be disagreeing with the material? They've just devoted 20 years of their life or more. I mean, to devote themselves to this. You think that somebody devotes themselves for so many years is just on a dime going to say, you know what? I was wrong. Last 20 years of my life, a waste. You know what? Everything I thought was wrong. It's the opposite. Earth is flat. No, they're not going to do it. And even if they did, they'd lose their job or whatever. So even if they're intellectually honest enough to change their mind, well, then the society is not going to accept it anyway. And then what qualifies a person as a scientist in the first place? I mean, am I not a scientist? I mean, I run experiments. I do a lot of, in my own personal and professional life, I do a lot of science stuff. So, I I can't go into it, but, what makes a person a scientist? So, they wouldn't publish the papers of people who do flat Earth stuff. They wouldn't acknowledge it. They wouldn't give it any ground, for, oh, and that's another thing. So like I sent you those Wikipedia links. This is kind of funny. So did you ever cover the fact on your show that Wikipedia on the sections for neutral point of view and weight, which are their main sections to talk, to be neutral on Wikipedia and to give things not undue weight. Did you know that these two entries specifically mention flat Earth?
Yeah, I remember looking at this. I don't remember if I
times.
Talked about it or something. Go ahead and explain. I'm showing it.
So so if you go to neutral point of view, go ahead and search. If you're showing it on your computer, go ahead and search for flat Earth. And look at how many times it comes up.
Okay.
I count 3, 4.
Looks like 4 times.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wait. Oh no. Wait. I'm sorry. Okay. I was running in a loop. Everybody. Forget that count.
I think it's 4.
It went from the top down and went back up. Okay. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Looks like 4.
So it looks like 4 times it's mentioned. So to think that out of all the conspiracies, right, that they could talk about, they could talk about, 9/11 or like World War II stuff or whatever. No, they talk about flat Earth. And it's not just here, it's also in their section on weight. And it's been like this for, years. So why is it then that Wikipedia has this obsession with singling out flat Earth out of all of the subjects scientifically? Like, why is that the one that bothers them so much? Why can't they give that one ground? Like, even when you have an article dedicated to flat Earth on Wikipedia, dedicated to it, why can't you mention their ideas? They're going to say, well, it's not supported by mainstream media, but that's not true. There was back in the early 1900s, there was articles and stuff. So why can't those be sourced? Is that not fair? Are those not primary sources? So the politics of Wikipedia is being used to basically allow an article that is dedicated to something like Royal Rife or flat Earth to not even talk about the frickin' thing that it's dedicated to.
Right.
How retarded is that? If I go to look up the subject of flat Earth, I don't want to hear about the heliocentric model. I want to hear what they thought.
Right.
And I want to hear the articles that support it. Not everything on Wikipedia has to be supported by mainstream media, but that is literally what they try to force.
And
they try to force it to say, oh, well, you can't give undue weight to flat Earth, even in an article about flat Earth.
Right. And this article actually even says Earth is flat more times. We just searched for the words flat Earth, but it talks about, claims that the Earth is flat, also that the Apollo moon landings were a hoax, similar ones. So it goes on and on from there. There's more. Yeah.
Yep. And then also on the weight one, they also do it there as well. So so that's just something worth pointing out. So yeah, and also it's just a logical fallacy. So ad populum, you're arguing that just because a bunch of people believe something, that obviously doesn't make it true, because a bunch of people disagree.
Right.
A bunch of people disagree about a lot of things. So that's stupid to just say, well, there's more people on this side than on the other side, so this side wins. It's not just consensus is not truth. Consensus is just consensus. If most people vote, if most people vote that they like the color purple, that doesn't mean purple's a superior color to blue.
Right.
So it's just nonsense. So does the flat Earth have scientific experiments? Yeah, I think we've gone over it. There's tons of things. There's computer models, Michelson-Morley, Airy's failure, all different types of things, tons of experiments. And I feel that that's what we're doing. I feel that we're a scientific community, and we get disregarded as an anti-science community, which is so offensive, because we do experiments and we check things. And I just sent you a link with all the math to make electrostatics for gravity, and we explore all these things. And we know the mainstream model. We're not ignorant of it. And that's how we got to this position. In fact, we learned it and we doubted it. And unlike the kids at school that got straight A's on the test, when we were given A, B, C, and D, we're like, wait a minute. I want to write an E because I don't agree with the question,
right.
And we're not given that option. So we're forced to go against.
And it's actually the people who believe in the mainstream heliocentric model that don't understand it, don't know it, don't get it. I mean, we've seen it many times before, where they just have no idea. You can ask them, how far away is the moon? How far away is the sun? They don't have any answers to these questions. Or even, did you know that during our summer that the sun is further away? They'll be like, what? No, during the summer the sun is closer. It's like, yeah, that's the flat Earth model, not the heliocentric model.
Right.
But they don't know that.
So does history show that the Earth is flat? And yeah, I mean, I talk about old religions, stuff like that. I mentioned the Flat Earth Society mocking us with universal acceleration.
Right.
Well, I mean, just sort of mocking the idea. I guess there's no jab at anybody in particular if you believe that. But does it mean that all governments are in on this? It seems like a conspiracy too big. And I mentioned that it's not really. Governments are known for lying. They're known for wars. There's secret societies, Rosicrucians, Masons. There's MK Ultra, all the stuff with military intelligence, the heavy classification that I mentioned. I also mentioned JTRIG, which is an organization that Snowden had leaked, which they're tasked with defamation, cyberbullying, and targeting of
Absolutely.
U.S. citizens and people of interest in general. So there are known, proven, admitted organizations that go out and propagandize. Propagandize is allowed. It is legal. I think it's legal, right? That they're allowed to do propaganda. There was like something that was changed recently, or
it was like I
imagining this?
can't think of the name of the act, but people in the chat will know. But yeah, that's the act where originally it was supposedly, and then they changed it back to where it is legal now.
Yeah, it should be treason, is what it should be. Really, if you're that powerful and you're committing propaganda, it should be treason. But yeah, Antarctic Treaty and stuff. So all the countries are in on it together to do that. And then, for the countries that don't agree, well, how are those countries being managed? I mean, maybe they don't have enough resources. They may not have the resources to go to space or to check things, or who's running them. And most of the times those countries that don't agree with these types of things are on our hit list for places to invade. So I mean, I think personally most of the countries are in on it, because if you look at things like Corona and you see how highly coordinated it is,
right.
That they're all pretty much doing the same thing. And I think it's just powerful people. They like to control their citizens. They see their citizens as their property, technically. So why is it then that these countries would really not have the same thing in common with each other? And like I said, if they go against it, I think that there was like some high-level Saudi clerics or something that said that the Earth was flat, and so you hear it sometimes for sure in large political arenas, but it's just dismissed. It's not covered by the news.
Right.
So they wouldn't talk about that.
If it is covered, they make fun of it.
Yeah, they mock it. They say, "Oh, look at these backwards, people in these these Arabic areas are saying the Earth is flat. Ha ha ha. Well, they're our enemies anyway. War on terror, blah blah blah, and that's the end of that. So it's sad, but it's true. But yeah, why wouldn't they be colluding? I mean, they're dropping bombs and trading weapons and doing all, tanks and riot gear and all this other stuff. I mean, come on. I mean, people need to open their eyes and understand. And also, like, laws aren't aligned with morality. So if there's all these different areas with all these different laws and all these different customs which are immoral, then why are we saying that their leaders are moral?
Right.
And like I said, or that they would know. And if they did know, would they dare step out of line? I mean, they're playing a pretty dangerous game already when they're that powerful. So yeah, why wouldn't longitude lines be wider at the south? And then I mentioned, Captain Cook and some other measurements of latitude lines. I think Eric Dubé had some on his documentary. I brought up a one comment that a researcher said at a different latitude point, and they're measuring them, and they seem that the measurements are wrong, and they come out as longer.
Right.
So there's a lot of issues with that. It does favor flat Earth. Yeah.
All the southern sailing comes up with the wrong numbers. Basically, when in the south, they're always off by a certain amount of degrees, and that could easily be the reason.
Okay, so here's a good one. So are all the maps wrong? And then I say yes. And so, like, there's the Mercator projection, which shows Greenland like 12 times bigger than it should be or something. But the thing is that one mistake I made in my documentary is I said that the azimuth map was perfect, and that was just wrong. It wasn't true. The azimuth map has mistakes, and even though it's used for like the high frequency radio and stuff like that, but the thing is that Australia is stretched, and that was pointed out on the documentary, and I thought about it and I was like, oh yeah, this guy's right. So I do listen to shills sometimes, because sometimes they give me information that's good. Mm-hmm. And so I heard it and I was like, okay, so I had to think about it. And honestly, Jaron, I didn't find that many videos on this. I was trying to find videos that would explain Australia, and there wasn't many. And then I ended up realizing, I was like, wait a minute, but how are these maps projected? And then that leads back to magnetic drift, which we talked about earlier. It's like, can you pull up the picture of the magnetic drift map?
Yep. Let me see if I can get it on here. Hold on one second. Let me actually be better if I save it. Let me save it and bring it up. It's already there. All right, it's coming up now. Go ahead.
Okay, so you have it up?
Yeah.
So isn't it crazy that it looks like where there's Australia, there's all these crazy drift lines on both sides?
Hold on. Let's reshape this a little bit. It's too big.
You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I just am not showing it to the people yet, but I will here soon. Okay, there. Now they can see it. Yeah, so it's kind of where all these things come together, basically, like a southern pole.
Yeah, it's like, why is it then that the lines over Australia specifically are like heavily hit with magnetic drift, So then that means if you're going down south and you're going to try to project a map, well, good luck, because you're not going to be able to use a compass. And so, yeah, it's just, there's a lot of problems with that. And so then if we were going to make an accurate map for the flat Earth, of course, one of them would have to be properly reprojecting those things, not based on the assumption of a globe. Because the thing is, too, when you start with the initial assumption of a globe and then you go and try to project your map, well, of course, you're going to stretch out your azimuth map, because you're not basing it on your compass measurements or measurements of the stars or sun down on the southern latitudes. You're gonna base it on your round ball, which you're going to reproject and stretch. But with that said, the azimuth map is more used for long range radio. It's more used by the military. So why would they be using it and not a globe, right?
And all their high altitude photos are always going to be placed on a ball model. So how are we ever going to see the true shape of any continent? I mean, we would need to put balloons up a certain height that we know that they can't get a picture. No balloon can go high enough to get a whole picture of Antarctica. Of Australia. So we'd have to put a few of them together and actually map the coastline ourselves, and that would tell us exactly what it looks like, not some pictures from the Mercator map, which we know are clearly wrong. Think of all the different projections. They all show a different shape of continents. So which one is correct? We don't know.
Yeah. So then the next one is the equator or the tilt. Yeah, I guess one with that is the South Pole disparity in temperature, like at -100 or worse, and you have the North Pole, which is
Right.
not as cold. So how do they explain that? How are seasons explained? So okay, so then that's the next question. Yeah, I mean that's already been covered. Uh, how is it that some miraculous ball of fire stays lit and produces all of this energy all the time to perfectly light? But it's a coincidence, and it just so happens to be that we're revolving around this magic light bulb, you know, like that there isn't that it all just that like that's what it is, and it's just this thing that's been going. And so yeah, I don't know. I think the flat Earth model is much simpler. I just think it's like, yeah, the sun heats the Earth, and you have heat inside of the Earth too, like in the magma and stuff, and all the pressure from that, and you have all these different things. Mostly the sun just explains your seasons, and of course, then the sun has different orbits, so it's not like a same orbit all the year. It spirals in and spirals out. So, what makes less assumptions? That's the next question on the FAQ. Yeah, a flat Earth. So when you're believing in the ball Earth, you have to believe that there's time traveling light, that we're blasting through space at millions of miles per hour, right? Or whatever, or, we're going around this galaxy, and like we're one of the only places that supports life. And then the next, there's a thing that heats us from 100 bazillion miles away, and then the moon doesn't crash into us, and the galaxy is flat. Oh, and then space bends, so bendy nothing. How do you bend nothing? I've never understood that one. How do you bend a
Nobody
void?
understands that one.
Is that a thing? It doesn't even make sense. It's like troll
No.
physics. It's like so that doesn't
And the way
make
they
sense.
show it to students is by getting some sort of fabric, right? Like a big piece of stretchy material, placing these heavy weights in them, and they say, see how these things orbit each other? And you're like, yeah, but there's a fabric there. They're like, yeah, that's the fabric
but
of
it also
space-time.
it also have to bend in all directions.
That's
it's
what
not
people
just going
don't
to
get.
bend on that one plane. It's going to have
Right.
to bend on every plane. So what they're illustrating has to be illustrated so
In
that there's
4D.
a fabric on every plane of existence.
Right.
Because
And
they're
I've
not
often
bending
mentioned
a
that.
thing. When you bend nothing, you're not bending anything.
No.
So how do you bend?
And then if you
a
bent
void?
things down like that, then there would have to be an up and down in space because you're bending down.
Yeah, it's so stupid. I can't
It's so
believe
stupid.
that's a
But this
thing.
is
I
the
can't
kind of
believe
thing they
people
can just
believe
talk
it. It's just
around.
amazing. It's like idiocracy is like it's like, dude, we're living in an Orwellian.
But that's all it takes for people is you put a marble in a big stretchy fabric and roll it around, and if it goes another marble for even just 2 orbits, because then the marble crashes right into the middle marble. Of course,
yeah,
that's what it have to do. But all you need to do is go around twice, and he's like, that's how everything
Oh
works.
yeah,
And
but
people
they'll
go,
say
"Oh."
friction. So friction causes it to crash. Remove the friction and it'll orbit forever.
Yeah, but
It's
remove
like,
the
yeah, okay,
friction-
then do that with a magnet and come back.
But remove the
Get one
friction,
magnet
and
to
there's no more
perpetually orbit.
fabric. There's no more fabric if the friction isn't there. So your whole experiment is out the window.
Yeah.
We did get a super
So-
chat from somebody real quick. Daniel Hobbs says, what is the name of the mountain that I have seen in some videos where the sun sets behind the mountain? It was one of the videos about seeing further than we should. Yeah, that's Canigou. I've talked about it. I think it's pronounced Canigou, but it's spelled Canigou. And here, I'll bring it up real quick. Just if you search Canigou, you can get all the images of it. It's like a twice-a-year thing where, you can see the sunset behind it, and it lights it up all pretty, so you can see the entire thing. And yeah, the viewing point that they usually view it from is like 1,000 feet, and what you're seeing is 175 miles away, and it should be like 2 miles or more behind the curve, and of course we can see it. But you'll get a lot of people say they've debunked it, and that you're actually only seeing the top of the mountain. And of course, this is a hilarious view that you get. That basically this is the mountain behind the curve, but for some reason it's lifted up here like the sun for you to see. Believe that if you want. It's all you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So that's the thing. Less assumptions. So the flat Earth doesn't make assumptions.
No, we see things. It's just there. What do I see there, Jaron?
Yeah.
You see the mountain. Well, why do I see it?
Exactly.
Because it's there.
Exactly.
It's there.
Yeah,
That's
and
what you see.
we'll do experiments, of course. That's part of being alive and testing things, and I feel like experiments should end up creating things. So if you do an experiment, you should be able to engineer something out of it. Now somebody could come back and say, "Whoa, but we have rockets." Well, yeah, we don't know where they go. They could be blowing them up off of the dome, or they could be launching them into the ocean, or intercepting them or whatever. We don't know where maybe they go over the South Pole. You know,
knows?
like what are the rockets doing? It's a good question. We know they come back down. That's for sure. And then actually, this is another funny thing, which I don't see a lot of people talking about. So it's not really impossible that there is zero gravity in space, even on a flat Earth. So like when you think about it, if there's an electrostatic field around the Earth, right? And then you get up into space, so then you're further from the electrostatic field. So wouldn't the pull on you be a little bit less anyway? Like if you were using an electrostatic theory of gravity and you got further from the electrostatic field, then yeah, I think you would maybe be in a zero gravity situation when you got up really high.
Interesting.
I'd be curious. I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, it would explain a lot. I mean, there's a lot of questions people have about certain things that might explain a lot and might be a reason. I don't know what height that would be and if we could get there and if they go there. It's an excellent
Maybe
question.
they do.
Maybe they do.
Yeah, maybe they do, and they're just lying about the shape of the Earth, but not the fact that if they could get there. I'm not saying they can, but people are really quick to say that they can't, and I'm pretty sure that I don't believe that they can. But like, you know, when you think about it, when you get up there, if you're further away from from a static pull or an electromagnetic field or something like that, then yeah, it would diminish little by little, and yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I don't see it being inconsistent with a flat Earth at all. When you really reframe how you're thinking about gravity in the first place.
No, I thought about it too, and I wouldn't put it past them to try and show a guy on a cord or show somebody who's faking space, and then you've got us all saying, "Oh, well, the whole thing is fake," where that's what they want you to believe.
They could be looking out of a curved window, and then they could really think they've been to space, and there could really be zero, or lesser gravity when they get there because they're moving so much further away from an electrostatic field. So, in fact, that's actually something that would work on both models anyway.
Right.
Then they're just say, oh, well, you're not high enough up to see the curve, or the curve's only really slight, and the window's just slightly curved, just the same way like airplane windows are curved. So, so yeah, what about the Earth's age? And then I say, yeah, exactly. What about it? How is it determined? So yeah,
we know the Earth's
it
age.
goes into a little bit about carbon dating and how would you know it's 1 billion years old? I mean, really?
Yeah, it's so stupid. Unless
not,
everything was
scientific.
exactly the way it was, and there was never an ice age, and there was never anything, and the temperature's always been the same. Everything's always acted as it does today, back billions of years. I mean,
and the moon never crashed into the Earth.
Yeah,
remember,
you wouldn't
nothing
be able
ever
to say
crashed
that.
into anything.
You wouldn't be able to say that for thousands of years, let alone millions, let alone.
Man, people can't even figure out what happened like in real time.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
like they go to court over this guy killing a cop killing some guy. He's going to get 3rd degree murder when it probably should be 1st degree. And people can't even agree on stuff that's right in front of their eyes.
Let alone,
if you walk in on a murder case, right, and you go into a place and then there's a dead body and the cops are arguing about what happened 10 minutes ago.
Right.
Seriously? You're going to tell me that you know what happened 1 billion years ago?
Right.
I mean, it's just get out, you know?
Ridiculous.
You know what I mean? It's just nonsense. And then of course carbon dating has been pulled into question. One of the more interesting things about that is that if you could send like living snails and they're dated at, a few thousand years, and then they send just send random things to the carbon dating labs and they come up with just ridiculous
we need more
disparities in number.
scientists. We need more scientists to do that. It's just like the, Tanzanian president sending all these basically fake coronavirus tests, because that really exposes what they're trying to get across. And that's something that's why you and I don't have access to sending in coronavirus tests, right? That's why they want you to go through a drive-through. Because if we did, you and I would just start sending in tests of anything. Well, let me test this water. Let me test this rock. Let me dip this in my dog's shit. And you just send them all in, and you would find out the whole tests are flawed, and everything they give you is just bullshit.
That was an amazing video. And then the thing is, when the news first started covering it, they were just like totally dismissal. They're like, nah, okay, so that's what he said. End of story.
Right.
Bye.
It's funny. Even I went to Snopes because I'm like, well, how is Snopes going to back out of this one? This is tough. And then you go to Snopes, it says unproven. Well, just because he says he tested those things doesn't really mean he did test those things. Like, all right, believe whatever you want, Snopes. Go ahead. I mean, they'll just dance through any hoops that they can. It gets kind of comical.
Snopes is the ultimate bootlicker. And also, if you were super
dirtball.
powerful and running the world and you were really concerned about threats to national security, don't you think it would behoove you to take control of Snopes?
Right.
Just
God, it's so obvious. It's disgusting.
Like,
anybody who goes to that is
you got the power. Like, you think that the guy who runs these pages aren't going to take a big boatload of money?
Right.
Like, come on, man. I mean, I'm not saying people sell out every day, but
People sell
people
out
sell
every
out
day.
every day, you know? So
I was
like,
gonna say, if
what's
you're
the
not gonna say
deal?
it, I'll say it. Come on. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and they're
true.
just gonna say, "Oh, we're just buying it," you know. They're not gonna be like we're like this insidious,
No,
mean group that wants to conquer the world. They're gonna be like, "Yeah, we want Snopes,"
sorry.
you know.
People put a couple $100,000 into something, and all their work and time and energy, and somebody comes along and says, "Here, I'm gonna give you $5 million for it." Good luck. I
Yeah,
think the people aren't gonna take
yeah,
that.
exactly. So, what about SpaceX? And yeah, we talked about that, and how silly that is. And you're probably going to cover that tomorrow anyway. Rockets, yeah, we talked about that. Are there other anomalies? So, yeah, this somebody asked about it before, the third sun. People see two moons in the sky, two suns, giant objects in the sky, all these things. There's tons of stuff. It's not a conspiracy. Go check it out. Go on Google Images, look for two suns, double moons.
There's lots of stuff.
Rahu, the thing where they see the third disk or a third thing in the sky. People see it. What it is, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, that's why we say it could be the cause of eclipses. Eclipses could be caused by something else. I've seen eclipses caused by this thing over the water, like with the angles or something. Maybe remember which one I'm talking about on the swimming pool
Oh yeah,
where they
it's
did an
great where
eclipse on that.
they
Of
yeah.
course, there's holographic stuff as well. Oh, and in my documentary, I have the cylindrical Pepper's ghost thing. And then if like with that, like depending on your angle, could change, of course, your perception of that as well. So there's also the question is how is the atmosphere or the sky constructed? Like if it's a mirror of some sort, you may have certain times where you have certain things cut off based on the shape of what it's going through or the container or something like that. I know I'm kind of jumping around with this, but I want people to stay open-minded and explore the answers to these questions because I don't think they're concrete. And yeah, I just think it's just really interesting. What about UFOs and aliens? So yeah, that's another one. The next question. It's funny. I used to kind of believe in that kind of stuff. And I said, because actually what got me into flat Earth was I thought the moon didn't make any sense. So I was like, man, it must have been created by something, But I didn't make the connection that maybe there was like a creator to like everything, But then I was like, yeah, it was. Well, I mean, I always kind of believed in God anyway, and I believed in the soul and stuff like that. But I didn't really know. Like, I didn't expand from it. So like, I was okay with believing in space and stuff. But then with the alien thing, it's like, well, I started to realize, like, but we don't have any evidence of this. Like, we might have a video here, a testimony here, a thing here or there. We hear stories. But I feel like it's best when you deal with stuff like that you have to think like, well, first of all, the military already has crafts, and then they say like, oh, it was a weather balloon. Well, maybe they're telling the truth. Like maybe it was a weather balloon. They have Zeppelins and they may have Zeppelins that are really fast and they may have crafts that are really, really fast that we're just not aware of. So we shouldn't underestimate the technology that the military has access to. And I think it's best to just stay conservative. Like, hey, if you see it with your own eyes and you see something like that and you see other forms of life in the world, then okay, then
Right.
And but does that mean that they come from other planets or whatever?
No.
I would argue that if the Earth is flat, it's more likely that other forms of life are nearby.
Right.
Whereas if the next star system is a bazillion miles away, then
That's
it's not likely that they're going to make it here.
Right.
What technology, what magic technology would they use to travel space? I mean, it's would be really something if they could make it here. But but if it's just like a flat contained thing, then and we're in some sort of zoo,
Right.
Then yeah,
Makes
it would
more
make sense that there would be other forms of life then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
extraterrestrials from the extra territory, a little further out, maybe slightly more evolved because they moved out with time and then left us here to fend for ourselves with some tyrannical dipshit governments. You never know.
Yeah, and I don't know, and so it's something like I like to work with. I don't want to like waste too much time in my life in the abstract. So I don't want to, and I've done it before. And so like that's why I'm not doing it anymore. Like I don't want to be stuck in fantasy land and stuck with imagining. Imagination is powerful, and it's okay if you want to be creative and you want to do stuff and stimulate all that. That's fine. But I think people need to remember to get back to reality because in today, people want to learn how to feed themselves. Like, oh my God, there's big problems with the economy. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So like, first of all, you want to figure out how to maybe farm or feed yourself or come up with a way to take care of yourself before even worrying about, abstract stuff like that. If you haven't experienced it firsthand, then what's the reason of of going full in and or all in on it, you know. But I mean, there is like, yeah, it's interesting. So, what does time lapse of the sun show? What about the Arctic summer? Doesn't that happen in the South Pole? Yeah, we kind of covered that, the 24-hour sun. But here's one that I want to talk about. This celestial pole in the 17-hour days. So, okay. So 17-hour days are pretty cool. Have you seen, I was trying to pull it up just a minute ago, Serbian Conspiracies video? He had like a 17-hour sun.
From Ushuaia or something?
Yeah, from Ushuaia.
Mm-hmm.
I actually looked for Ushuaia in YouTube, and then it showed me all these flat Earth shill videos. I didn't even search flat Earth, so it just shows how dedicated they are to dismissing it.
Right.
Like they care almost more than we do now. You know, like I searched Ushuaia, and they're like, "Oh, flat Earth is so stupid," and there was like a Paul Logan video or something.
Right, of course.
So I searched Ushuaia Serbian conspiracy. So but yeah, there's 17-hour time lapse, and I thought that video was interesting because it shows like the sun kind of like expanding a lot. It looked like it was really, really flaring up, which was interesting. So I felt like that was like showing some really anomalous atmospheric conditions for the time lapse. In my opinion, it looked really crazy. But with that said, there's advanced sunrise and delayed sunset, and I think that to be the norm on the south. So
right.
I think 17-hour days is totally fine.
Makes sense.
People don't understand because they look at the map. They look at the azimuth equidistant map and they say it'd be impossible because the sun would have to be like halfway around the world. That's not actually true. What it is that if you look on, like if you're looking easternly or westernly or whatever, you're like watching the sun, you know, do its circuit, right? And you know, so you start with it and you see it rising. And the thing is you could be looking at an advanced sunrise. So it's actually rising because it's projected further. Mm-hmm. So, but it's like, and then it's setting because of the same reason. So because it projects further out, then right. It sets like later than it should, and it rises earlier than it should because there's an increased amount of magnification in the atmosphere.
And of course, that's when it's on its outermost track as well.
Right. And so the reason why things would be like that is if you think about it, somebody who would have built or designed this place would want an even amount of sunlight for the summer seasons for the north and to the south. They would want that so that vegetation would grow, plant life would grow, and all those other things. It makes perfect sense. And also it helps us navigate our ways back home, and we have our summers. So, you know, I think it's perfectly explainable, and I think that it's an important subject because it doesn't get talked about enough. So yeah, definitely advanced sunrise and delayed sunset to describe these 17-hour days. And for 24-hour sun, there's been things with double convex lenses which show like that it could possibly be light on the rim. Perhaps it's reflecting around with all the ice and all the wall or dome or whatever. It's like reflecting around the edges.
Right.
And so then when it gets to a certain angle, and then to keep things well lit. But to say that you can see the sun the entire time is a totally different thing.
Right. So
the question isn't whether or not it's light. The question is whether or not you can see the sun above the horizon. And I think that that's why they can't generate a 24-hour south sun.
Right.
And I'd be willing to send a drone down there or something to check up on that because I bet you I'd come out finding that it's not the case.
Right.
You know.
No, I totally agree.
So yeah, should I keep going? So I mentioned magnetic drift.
I think we're moving along quite a bit.
I'm
trying to keep up with you with putting the questions on the screen. I think we're doing okay.
Oh, okay. I hope I didn't skip any.
No, I think we covered most of them.
I'm at page 24, so we're almost done.
Oh, what I started doing is I started putting multiple questions in the same screen, so we're fine. It'll still look good for the viewer.
So what about compasses and magnetic drift? We kind of covered that. Didn't old culture circumnavigate with the assumption of the round Earth? And, you know, that's not true. They use sextants. They use the stars to navigate. And, of course, because of the same reason, because of, you know, holographic properties, magnification, refraction, you wouldn't see the southern stars, you know, or the northern stars in the south, although they are sometimes visible when they shouldn't be visible, which, again, kind of helps bolster the flat Earth theory. But yeah, they use those things. They still work today. Their sundials still work. Their astrolabes still work. So what's the big deal? They circumnavigated using both methods. And then I know Eric Dubé mentioned that people would find themselves out of reckoning all the time when they were going and switching to the globe, and they found themselves getting lost and sinking their ships. Right. So Yeah, I don't think that all the circumnavigators did that. They had maps too, and they were fine. And it's stupid to say that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue and then discovered the Earth. That's stupid. There was maps before him.
Right.
People had maps. The cartography's been happening since man could explore. So the idea that
Well, my
that,
favorite one
that
is
things
that
weren't mapped out is
Aristophanes proved the size of the ball in 2300 BC, and then it took 1700 years till somebody got in a boat and said, "Let's go west."
yeah, yeah.
Well, what the hell did they do for those
exactly.
1700 years? Just thought about it, like, well, we know the size of this ball now, but let's not go west.
Oh, yeah, but then there's all the pyramids that all have similar types
Right,
of influences for their designs, for the lifting of large stones, and for all that coordination
Right.
that would have only been possible if there was international trade of some sort, or some form of international communication, or something like that.
You mean they're
You know,
lying
to
about
think that they'd
history?
all just come up with those ideas just on their own and be like, oh, hey, you decided to move large rocks and make these wonderful monoliths? Us too. And we've never, ever heard of you before. You know, so the idea that there was no such thing as, trade with humans, and humans are smart, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, why are we thinking that what we have today and we're so much smarter than we were before? Why? What changed?
Right.
Were we not human back then? Were we not inquisitive and curious? But they'll say that we were just Neanderthal,
It was the Dark
troglodytes
Ages.
that
It was-
couldn't rub two
Right.
nickels together. It's stupid. And to think that, oh yeah, we discovered numbers. I'm sure that we had numbers for as long as we've had a brain.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that we just like learned to count and then we're like, hey, this is a discovery. Tell the whole world about it. But maybe it is, and that's fine. And if humanity develops and such, that obviously doesn't prove. It doesn't show one thing or the other, whether, the Earth is flat around. You were able to circumnavigate both of them. So doesn't the moon reflect light? That's the next question. What causes the phases? And yeah, basically we've mentioned like that there could be other disks in the sky. There's the thing where they show the moon over the water that has phases. And I don't know if you have anything else to add to that. There's holographic theories and stuff. And so what do you have anything on that or no?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it many a times on Globebusters, and there's lots of different, theories about the moon getting some sort of, not necessarily reflection, but a charge from the sun. And as it gets closer, it actually loses that charge and gets further, kind of charges up on its way out. It could be anything, but it makes sense to me, and I think that it shows, just like you talked about earlier with the
Oh
moon
yeah, it
being-
could still be a reflection of the sun. Yeah, I forgot.
Could be.
I think it's I
Sure.
think it's mentioned in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moon's offset circuit compared to the sun's causes it to receive portions of light from the sun and reflect it. So yeah, I mentioned it.
Yeah.
So the next one is, what about rainbows and comets? So rainbows, they say that you can't make them indoors, right? And I don't know if that's true. Be interesting. I mean,
I've seen
I've
a
heard you can't make it
couple-
without a dome.
Yeah, I've seen a couple
and-
videos that show somebody doing it inside, but they're always doing it with a domed light in the
Yeah.
room. So yeah, it could be true.
And then comets, that's another one. So yeah, actually, this kind of supports a flat Earth a little bit. So if you have a enclosure, like a pressurized enclosure, then it's possible that the sun's orbiting around it, right? And the heat from the sun is melting the exterior of the closure, which is mostly cold or completely frozen, right? So that could be water, ice, whatever. So we could be encased in ice, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm just throwing this out there.
Thought
And so
about it
then
myself,
if the
yeah.
sun's going around and heating and cooling it, right? Then what would happen is it would form like a stalactite. Stalactite, when you're doing spelunkers, they go down into the caves and they see like these long
Right.
strips of earth that kind of dip, and then there's like a water that forms a droplet and then falls from the dip,
Absolutely.
right?
Mhm.
So then that would make a lot of sense, because then NASA would be able to see it. They'd be able to predict it because they have really powerful telescopes, So they'd see it forming, and then they'd see it fall. So I think that that's one possibility. And just in general, just the fact that if we're in an enclosure, then parts of the enclosure could melt and fall. And then you've heard about chunks of ice falling to the ground and stuff like that. So, and then why does it burn up in the atmosphere? If it was made out of hydrogen or water or some sort of aqueous substance, then it would make a lot of sense that it would be going through the atmosphere and just completely burn up, And then whatever would be left, the little bits of earth that would be left would just be debris. and then it would hit the Earth and occasionally damage it because it's falling so fast. You know what I mean?
Good points. Yep.
So those are things I haven't heard talked about, but I think they're kind of cool. And then I mentioned some other stuff in the FAQ people might want to read. So yeah, we've talked about eclipses. Is the flat Earth a religious argument? I say that it is not. I say that it is a scientific argument. And if we want to know where we live, we start inquiring and testing it. So yeah, although there are religious implications, a designer or a creator doesn't necessarily mean a religion. I would say that it just means that we had a creator. And I don't feel like, how do you have a creation without a creator? It's just kind of weird. So, but yeah, I mean, does that mean that whatever created where we are created everything? Like, is what created where we are, like, did that same entity create light? Did it create like existence? Like, I don't know. It's like, I mean, I don't think we should be making any assumptions in that regard. So I don't see it as a religious argument. I repeat, how can the scientific community be controlled? We've kind of talked about that. Control the media. How is internet opinion controlled? There's shills. And also, I mentioned JTRIG earlier. I don't know. Have you ever talked about them before?
Absolutely. Yeah. JTRIG, a lot.
Yeah.
It's out there.
So,
I mean, there's bots. I mean, it's so easy for them to do. The
ridicule.
trolls are out there. Ridicule, hate. Seeing the same comments on all videos. You shouldn't reproduce. You should die in a gas chamber. Your family should die. These are the kind of things we see.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's always from YouTube channels that have no logo. They have no videos. They have no subscribers. They're just fakes.
Oh, and also then, just like we just mentioned earlier with Wikipedia, like right from the horse's mouth, like this question is literally answered by itself. Like, go to the internet and check. You'll see Wikipedia saying they won't allow it. You'll see Google saying they won't allow it. So they're already censoring it. So that should answer that question.
Tell you something, yeah.
How is Cavendish's experiment done? That's a good one. So yeah, it can't be reproduced. So that's that. What is the vanishing point? That's mentioned. Eric Dubé talks about it. You guys have talked about it.
People get that one, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Can anything else cause things to disappear on the horizon? Yeah. So there's your eye. There's the angular resolution, what your eye can resolve, what your camera can resolve. The distance at which things are.
People need to remember
the
that
shape
any kind
of your
of
eye, the shape of a camera,
and any item that we have in this world at a certain distance, you just can't see it anymore. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. If we just were talking about Canigou, which is a 9,000 foot tall mountain, and it's impressive that you can see it from 175 miles. Well, then think at 250 miles, how big does something need to be able to be seen? How about at 450 miles? How about at 1,000 miles? How about at 2,000 miles? So to think that you'd ever be able to see across the Atlantic Ocean some 2,500 miles or across the continental United States is insanity. The size of something in New York for you to see, because people, why can't you see New York buildings from California? Well, those buildings would need to be 200 miles tall. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but even that wouldn't work because you'd have refraction,
atmosphere in the way.
magnification, dew,
Right.
dust, smog, air density, cloud,
Smoke,
whatever.
smog.
Yeah. And also, like when you look out into the horizon, because you can see like the clouds get lower to your line of sight, and of course because your focal point on the atmosphere is different. So as you ascend, you're going to see further because of the change in the refractive angle. So star patterns. What's this? Is that the next one? Yeah, star patterns change if I'm north or south of them. Well, yeah, we kind of talked about that. When you're north or south of the equator and the way that you perceive stars. Like if you're looking on the outside of a salad bowl and it's spinning, you're going to see them spinning, from east to west. And if you look at the top of the salad bowl while you're spinning it, kind of looking from the inside, you're going to see like the center point, everything revolve around the center point at the top. You could paint stars on a bowl and spin it and see yourself. It's the same thing. It's not a problem.
I mean, all stars rise in the east and
set in the west.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just knowing that, I mean, that means that if you're looking north, well, they're rising on your right, setting on your left, which means that they're moving in a counterclockwise way. Well, if you just turn around and look south, now they're rising on your left, setting on your right, which means that they're now moving clockwise. So it's really that simple.
Yeah, and that answers the next question about clockwise and counterclockwise, and people can go ahead and read that for an elaboration. Tours about Antarctica. Can't we see the edge? Won't we fall off the edge? So anybody who makes a claim that they know what's at the edge is just giving you lip service, I think. I don't think anybody knows, nor should we make the claim that we do know, that there is this, even like this ice wall. I think that's a major exaggeration. I think it's just because we take it from, journals, and we say, okay, like Captain Cook went around and then he saw like was just nothing but a big wall of ice, and we take pictures of massive glaciers and massive amounts of ice. So we have it, and we have pictures of it, and that's fine. So we're not saying like every single inch of the South is a big wall of ice, but there is a ton of glaciers and there's a ton of ice. Right. So
it's definitely
can
an
you
ice
go down there?
shoreline.
I mean, it's 100 degrees. You don't negative 100 degrees in certain parts, or negative 50, 60, 70 degrees. I've been in that kind of weather. It's crazy. Going out in that kind of weather is horrible. I mean, you have to be careful. If your car breaks down, you could die. I mean, it's not a game. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to go over there and hum-de-dum. I'm going to find out what's down there. Like, they say they don't even fly down there because it's too cold, if that gives you an idea of how cold it is. So it doesn't need to be guarded, and we don't know how far we could go down there. I don't know if they're hiding more land. I'm going to guess we're probably enclosed in some sort of thing. I don't know if there's, like, outside of it. I guess there would be, maybe. But I don't know. This is a good question. But the tours to Antarctica, like I said, if it stays light for the most time when you're down there, that's fine. It's not inconsistent with the Flat Earth model. But if you ever go down there during the supposed 24-hour Antarctic sun, please take a time lapse for us, because we need more of that from unbiased points of views. And you've covered the Antarctic tours, and I just literally recently asked you about this, I think. Or did I ask you about this? Or no, I asked you about flights. Yeah, that was it. But yeah, no, you have a thing exposing the Antarctic tours, how they're like all owned by some military guys or something like that, which was pretty good.
Yeah, and then Taboo Conspiracy did a great video called Sorry, Antarctica is Closed. Definitely check that one out. Great information there. Did a lot of research on that.
Yeah, and so then it asks if there ever been flights over Antarctica. Of course, no. Circumnavigating over the south back to the north. Nope, they turn around, at least the ones that say, and there's very, very few people ever who've ever claimed it. I think more people probably claim to go to space.
Oh, yeah, by far.
Yeah, by far. So what about flights from Chile to Australia? That's a good one. It's covered in my documentary. I mentioned that I think they veer north, and I know that they use like special equipment. We talked about this, what we talked about. You said they can catch the jet stream, which
Chile
is cool. I don't think I mentioned that in my FAQ, which sucks. I wish I did.
Chile to Australia, though, really they go north. I mean, the one that I think they catch the jet stream is Australia to... Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that's... Okay, I see what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah,
sorry.
they catch it. They catch the jet stream on there and back, right?
Yeah, to Santiago. I was thinking Santiago, not Chile, but got you.
Yeah, it's okay. So, but yeah, I mean, you could argue they have special equipment. Plus, if they go to the higher altitude, it would be very plausibly deniable. And in my documentary, I found things that I had never seen on any other channel, which was one of them was a guy speaking in Spanish saying that he was frustrated that the plane disappeared off GPS, and he was filming his flight. I don't know why.
Right.
He was just filming it. He wasn't a conspiracy theorist, just a guy. And I thought it was great footage, so I included it in my documentary because it's like, okay, here you go. Proof. Disappears from GPS. Proof of what? I don't know. But proof of something really weird going on. And so if there's an anomaly, and we already know people are capable of lying anyway, so what's the point? So all they have to do is lie about like this one flight. This is the one that everybody always calls into question, because there is no Johannesburg to Sydney direct. No. There's no. This is one of the only major types of flights that happen daily. The ones that go to Auckland and to go to Sydney. And so like as long as that one flight is there, that's not proof of either model. It's proof of nothing, because it's not enough. You're only dealing with some really weird edge case. And
it's like I've been waiting to see. Show me Auckland to Johannesburg.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
they won't do
Yeah,
that
show
one.
me show me some more,
Because
and
that one
also
would only
even
make
then, I
sense
mean,
right over the
I
South
hate
Pole.
to say it, but even if they showed me that, I wouldn't believe it. I mean, I already don't trust them, so why am I
Right.
going to trust that their equipment that they're having on those planes and the autopilot they have set and all that other stuff, that's
Pilots don't
already
have a clue where they're
doing
going.
the flight for the pilot anyway. So
Right.
yeah, and they make pit stops, and there's no straight flights, and it's been an issue that's really been covered a lot. So how can the theory be proven once and for all? Okay, so I argued circumnavigation. So I think that if you're really going to prove it, go down to the south and properly map it out and circumnavigate it and see how long it takes you. Because if it really takes you 4 or 5 times the amount of time that it should be taking you on the south rim, please, we're not on a ball. There's
Right.
no way.
It's clear.
Yeah, it's over. That's it. The debate's over. We could be on something else, but we ain't on a ball.
But again, the people who do circumnavigate down south, they end up saying, "Oh, we went this distance," which is whatever they say around Antarctica is. I think it's like 14, 15,000 miles or whatever. But then when they come back with their speed, it took them 100 days. You're like, wait a second. So you were down there 100 days. You only went 14,000 miles. You do the math, and it comes back that they were doing 3 knots. And then you find the boat that they have, and you go check out the boat, and you look at the boat, and it goes 25 or 30 knots. Well, the difference in that, if you take the 25 knots multiplied by the amount of time they were down there, all of a sudden they could have easily done 80,000 miles journey. But again, if they think they live on a ball, then they're going to instead say, no, the boat was going really slow. And when you're down south, how the hell do you know? You don't know.
No, you don't know, and then and you read their journals and you find out these are some major inconsistencies. And I've also talked to ship captains, and there was one guy who didn't know about the flat Earth theory, and he was taking some of those southern routes, and I talked to him about it, and I was like, look, I mean, are you delayed on schedule? Because he's taking like Indian Ocean and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, man, all the time. It's just really frustrating. And I was like, well, have you ever considered that maybe we're not on a ball? And he just like paused for a beat. He's like,
What?
he's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, maybe that is it. It was like, because if you think about it, when you go further south, right, the distances are longer. So maybe the flat Earth thing was always the truth. And so like the guy was really open to it almost immediately because it spoke to his experience. Because he noticed that a lot of strange anomalies when he was over the ocean, which he probably just left all these unanswered questions in his head. Now, for that matter, I think usually they're going to hug the shores so that they don't have that problem. And of course, because they're doing trade, they're going to make that excuse that they have to hit all those ports anyway. So who's even going to be taking the
and then
long route?
If you're south, you can't really hug the shore because of all the sea ice. So, I mean, that's what you have to stay away from if you're in one of those boats. Now, they can just say, oh, we were close to the thing, that's why we went slower. But again, at 60 degrees, you really shouldn't have that much sea ice to deal with. But it becomes hard. Basically, somebody circumnavigating at 60 degrees will never see anything on their horizon any direction they look.
So yeah, and so then I summarize the theory on the next one, and then I say, if you've read this far, and so then this is basically the gist of it. And I basically say, I'm not here to change anybody's mind. Right. This is all like for FAQ, for you guys in the Flat Earth community, if you want to share this, and also really if you want to condense it, because I'd love to see a way to say more with less. And I think I could probably do it, but I think for the sake of content and for Jaren's channel, I was willing to make the appearance today and really go out and explain, because there's going to be things that I'm going to mention that definitely were not in the fact, and I hope I did that and I answered the questions in my own way. It's not like I just read off the FAQ, you know what I mean? But right. Basically, like, I'm trying to tell people to stay positive because the truth of the matter is like, empires rise, empires fall, this too shall pass, the coronavirus and all that stuff like that, this too shall pass. One day it'll pass, maybe in 20 years, unfortunately, maybe we won't be able to see a time in our life when things are truly free. But there's an individual decision that you make in your own personal life where you can choose to be free. You don't have to obey unjust laws. You don't have to follow unjust orders. You don't have to put a face mask if you don't want to. And if they arrest you, they arrest you. Okay. I mean, some people just don't want to take the risk. They don't want to live that way. But you know what? You can save up money. You can move. You can get land out in the rural areas, go off grid and stuff like that. And I say, this is something I really stress a lot, is I feel like schools should be teaching children how to physically do things. Like, Could you imagine if there was a school that taught you how to like sew, cook, farm, use chemicals, identify plants, manage a business, do construction, make electronics, repair cars, create art, do experiments, meditate, play sports and all that kind of stuff. Like, could you imagine if there was a school that did that?
Right.
Like there was just no books. I mean, that school would be so badass that I'd probably attend with my kids.
Right. Absolutely.
I'd be like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I'd be like this old guy just sitting there in the class and
Learning everything again.
He's like, quiet, I'm trying to learn. How do I sew again? This is so cool. I mean, it'd be amazing, and
Totally
like
agree.
schools don't teach you anything. If they just taught you one of these things, then you'd get out of school with a trade skill or 10 trade skills.
Right.
You could have a job anywhere. You'd be like, oh, I've been farming in my school. We've been doing it for the past 10 years. So you'd be, 18, 19, 20 years old when you get out of your school, and you'd be like just ready. You'd be armed
for anything, really.
And ready to go. You'd be able to, you'd know all these things about, farming. You'd be an expert at painting, so I mean, or whatever it is that you want to do. So I feel like if people really get stimulated to actually learn things instead of just memorize a bunch of useless factoids, then man, this world would be it'd be a wonderful, wonderful paradise, man. It'd be awesome. And it's just sad that we live in a world that doesn't really support the kids in that way, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are innocent. They're the ones who have a pure, innocent heart, and then they get their minds filled with garbage from all these old, disgusting bastards, who send our kids off to war to fight and die, And it just sucks, man. I wish that we had schools that did that. Maybe people do know of some schools that do those types of things. If so, it'd be nice. Leave it out in the chats or the comment section, because I feel like that's the way things should go. And maybe homeschoolers will start to form these groups and start to do those types of activities and stuff like that. I'd really like to see an upsurgence in that. They like get together and like nowadays, if the government's telling you to distance yourselves, I would say more now than ever should you be closer to people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just ridiculous. And even if everything that they were saying is true, there's herd immunity and it's just a flu anyway. It would only kill like 1 in 1,000 people or less that get it anyway. So why are we freaking out over something like that? And the answer is obvious, because they're shorting the economy. They're destroying the markets. They're shorting the stock markets and making billions of dollars at our expense. They're buying up companies on the cheap. They're getting companies to be indebted, to be enslaved by loans and debts. So of course this benefits them in so many ways. It's just scary. They can restrict all of your constitutional rights now because they say, oh, well, curfew time. Sorry, everybody's got to go to bed. We don't want riots. I mean, it's amazing how much things have changed overnight, and how I really hope that people fight for their own freedoms one way or another. So whether or not I'm going to say, go off grid, buy a plot of land, build your house. I understand there's permit laws. That's their other way of enslaving you, is telling you what you can and can't build on your own land. You can't live in a trailer on your own land, which I think is ridiculous.
Right.
Especially if it's in a rural area. Like, why shouldn't you be able to? But they'll get you. Don't get it twisted. They'll come after you if you're violating their permit law and you're in an area that's relatively remote but close enough to a city. Like, they'll have a problem with it. And that's just the way that things are nowadays. So, find the loopholes, figure out how to get around it, or just disobey it and see if you can fight it. Or just go to a country that supports it. So I think people should just really fight back in any way, shape, or form that they can. I'd rather be creating tools and offering solutions than I would rather be, always constantly describing the problem. So I think Flat Earth is just really a good exercise in how to self-teach, And if you went and you self-teach and you still find that you don't believe the Earth is flat and you still agree with the heliocentric model, then good for you. I mean, at least you went, did the work,
right,
and you taught yourself and you liked what it is that you came to the conclusion of. But what I would argue is just be careful of how you come to those conclusions. Because like I said, I had a friend who said he knew how far the moon was because he could look at a quarter and hold it up to his face and look at the moon.
Right.
So if you're not really seriously questioning the your own conclusions and like where you got them from, be really careful, because your beliefs could be completely wrong and easily undermined. So the scientific method isn't to have some trivial, stupid experiment like holding a quarter up to your face. the scientific method is to use an experiment, if that was your experiment, then to say, okay, well, then what were my initial assumptions?
Right.
Okay, my initial assumptions was the diameter of the moon. Okay, cool. So what is the experiment that I have to validate that one? And then when you continually question, yeah, I'd be like, oh, what? I'm empty-handed.
Damn it.
I don't have an experiment for that one. You know, so
That's where a lot of people miss
yeah.
it, is they take what they're given, and of course that's something that would be in some website or something. How can you prove to yourself that the moon is the size? Take a quarter or outstretch it. That's, and then people will just fall for that. They won't realize that there's already the assumption of the answer right there.
So, I mean, yeah, and if you're the type of person, you've gone out and you feel like that what you've measured is curvature, and then that's your belief, and you have a response to us, and you say, hey, well, it's not atmospheric magnification because of this, but you need to still have something to put it in context, because if you're going to say over 100 miles, it wouldn't do that. Well, how would you know what it would do over 100 miles? There's a compounding effect. Right. There's like, what do you have as your frame of reference? You can't take a short distance of something and assume it's the same over a long distance. It's the same as the pool ball example. If you shoot, it's like playing golf. I mean, you're going to expect to get so accurate in your prediction that you're just going to get a hole in one. Right. You're going to assume that the light's going to behave exactly the way that you think you've predicted it in your model to make sure that beyond a shadow of a doubt that the flat Earth model is just false. I don't think so. And I just want people who research it to be intellectually honest, and I hope to be, it's like with myself, I find that the most important thing is being honest and with yourself, because if you find yourself not doing that, then you're screwed from the get-go. You're not even going to be honest to others either. So, and self-honesty is a big thing. Like I've learned how, like, certain things that I used to tell myself, if I tell myself, hey, I'm going to get up I'm going to get up early and I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to exercise and, do all this stuff. And this is how I'm going to plot out my day. And if I don't do it, then I wasn't really being honest to myself. Right. So, I feel now that it's best to really make commitments and promises to myself that I feel like I really can keep. And by doing that, I think it helps. So I think all of this it's not just an exercise in flat Earth, but in, psychology and how you want to live your life and, how you're going to go pursue to be happy amidst all of the really depressing things that are going on nowadays, And I think it's just to highlight the things in the world that are great and good, and to not put all your time and energy into the things that are bad, even if you acknowledge them. So, yeah. And that's that. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say or expand on it or whatnot.
No, I mean, I put on the screen the bit.ly.FAQ or bit.ly/FEFAQ if people want to download that document. But I could listen to you really all day. I wish you had a channel again, but I know you're busy. But
yeah,
you're welcome. You're welcome here anytime you want. If you want to ever join a Friday show, just reach out and let me know. But I hope people enjoy that FAQ document. It's nice to have Triple R join me today. We've talked many times offline, and so I'm happy that we were able to finally do this on a live video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed him. Hopefully you enjoyed him joining us and got some good bits out of it. And I think if you read the FAQ document in full, you'll really get some good information out of it. So I just appreciate you finally getting to join me.
Yeah, also you might want to post the video elsewhere before YouTube rips it down the second the live interview is over, because I'm sure we said something that they don't like.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
it's the way it always goes. So luckily we were on live at the same time.
I can't say that I will be on future shows, because I just don't want to get anybody's hopes. hopes. I'm busy. I do a lot of stuff. I run a lot of businesses, and unfortunately I don't know when I'll have the time. But if I do, and if I have a time maybe to join one of your group chats,
good.
Yeah, I'd be down to do it. But I've been getting calls all day, so for stuff, and I really have to, get back to work.
All right, well, great. I appreciate it. I mean, that was 4 hours, or almost 4 hours, 3 hours, 45 minutes. So thank you for spending that. All the links that we discussed, the electrostatic gravity comparison document, all the other documents that we talked about will be in the description, so people will be able to find those. Final words, and I guess we'll head out.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I have a lot more archives and stuff and things we could link, and it's unfortunate we couldn't be better prepared. I mean, if somebody really has sat and listened to all this, like, wow, kudos to you. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I'm honored. I'm sure Jaren's honored
Absolutely.
that people do this and that people do subscribe to this stuff, and that hopefully it relaxes them. It lets them know that they're not alone, and that there's other people out there that do notice the stuff that's going on and pay attention to it, and try to expand on it, and to learn more about the world that we're living in. And yeah, what else can I say? Jaren, thank you. I'm honored for you having me on today, and also for the entire Flat Earth community for being so positive and receptive when I first posted my video. I didn't get that many shills, which was great. I maybe it was just too much for them. They're like, ugh. I can't fight this.
Right.
It's too much. Because and even the shills did kind of follow. Some of them followed the rules, which was to not do too many ad hominem or logical fallacies. So sometimes when you tell them to not do it, they won't. But yeah, just the general positive feedback. People, mirroring, sharing the video. Anything from the FAQ they want to use for their videos, of course, they're more welcome to. Anything that I've said that they want to go explore, yeah, please do.
Yeah,
And
so it's a
any
great.
mistakes and errors or anything like that, I'm sorry, and not perfect. But this is like my body of research and my body of work, and of course, mistakes are to be made, and that's part of the scientific process. That's why experiments get repeated,
Right.
and you know what I mean. So we can continuously, rigorously repeat an experiment, and then finally, like, okay, we're really confident with our system. So, and I don't feel like the conclusions of experiments are dogmatic anyway. You don't come to a conclusion and you say, okay, it is electrostatics, full stop.
Right.
You keep exploring and you make sure that that is indeed what it is that you're testing, and you still keep it open for the missing variable. Like if you do stick and shadow, like the whole premise of the documentary, and you are eliminating the variable of the atmosphere, well, then it's not a valid experiment, is it?
Right.
You have to include the variables. You can't just omit them and just brush them off as irrelevant. That's not scientific. And unfortunately, in today's modern age, especially with Corona, we have example with Corona of a scientific conspiracy. Whether people believe the full story or not, whether they think it's caused by medicines or frequencies, or whether or not they're getting them sick in the hospitals, or whether or not they believe it's the flu. Even if they believe it's a contagious flu, there is doctors all over the world fighting tooth and nail to try to get their voices heard, and they're not getting their voices heard. They're getting censored unanimously across all platforms. You're not even allowed to post memes on Facebook. They'll delete them. Jokes, they delete them. Like, they are going full on censorship. And that, my friend, is a scientific conspiracy, just like Flat Earth, right in everybody's face.
Can't believe it.
It's
It's right there.
It's amazing.
It's right there for you to see.
Huh?
So it's right there for them to see. Just people who act like they don't see it.
Yeah, and there's doctors that are saying it. These aren't even conspiracy theorists anymore. Right. These are just regular people. They're like, whoa. I was like, wait a minute. All my years in medical profession, we don't put people on respirators like that when they have the flu. So I mean, you're hearing it from all these people, and yet now it's just a sea of noise because the news is just so dominated. And it's just like why President Kennedy said, he was like, people were trying to control the media through covert means, and that's why the freedom of speech was protected by the First Amendment. Because when you have people who want to fully censor and fully control the news, it's over. It's like you can't be a martyr without the press coverage. So people really now need to think about the solutions that they want to bring to their own personal life, like what they want to do, how they're planning to get off grid. I understand that there's a thing about money and people have to worry about it, but when you really think about it, enough of the people out there probably do at least have the ability to start saving something. And there are methods, of course, which you can go off grid for free. And if you self-teach and if you learn how to do those things, it doesn't cost hardly anything to learn how to grow crops. You see what I'm saying? And then that information that you've learned gets passed down to your friends and to your kids. And, then people might start forming community gardens or doing certain things. Of course, maybe those will be made illegal. They'll be like, oh, coronavirus, community garden. No, you can't have that. So we have to be really careful. We're in dangerous times. There's a major assault on people's freedoms going on right now, and I just hope everybody stays safe and happy. And thank you for listening and taking the time.
Awesome. Yeah, you've been amazing. It's great that you've been on. If anybody wants to support this show, patreon.com/jeranism is the best way to do that. If you want to mail me something, you can do that as well through the old Pony Express, P.O. Box 3044, Merced, California, 95344. Again, all the links are in the description, the FAQ document. And, it'd be a great idea for somebody to take that document. I think we said there were 70 questions, but you could make 100 questions and really shorten the answers and be able to do it in, I don't know, an hour video. I think it'd be great. Just ideas for people out there looking for something to do or create. That'd be great. 100 FAQs, 100 FE FAQs, something like that. We did it here, but we obviously took 4 hours to do it. But it was great. I'm glad that we had Triple R on, Research Royal Rife, and while you're at it, do that. Research Royal Rife. Well, you got nothing else to do. All right, it's been fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for taking the time, Jerry, and thanks for having me on.
All right, everybody. Remember, do your own research, because when you do, you'll never again believe what you've been taught. Tomorrow, 12 noon, we have the lounge. Join us. We'll have lots of topics and lots of panel members. It'll be another long show, but should be enjoyable. See you guys tomorrow. Till then, this has been Jeranism and Research Royal Rife. See you soon. Peace.